Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Cinema Savvy. It is myself, George, joined once more by Tayte and Paul for the third and final episode in our Harry Potter casting series, where we are going to be casting the new HBO series. Of course, the books are being rebooted into a TV show on HBO, and they're pretty, we think, deep into the casting searches. It starts up in April, the filming. There's been some open casting calls, there's been some names chucked around, and we're finishing off our three-part series, because today we're going to be casting dark wizards and villains, which, did we save the best till last? Maybe. We will be saying we're going to end this episode with Lord Voldemort himself, which is quite fun, almost the main event. And as a heads up, the thumbnail's a bit of bait. My pick isn't Doctor Strange. So if you thought that, you're wrong. Before we start talking these, how are you both doing today?
Doing good, doing okay. Very excited about this final episode. We've all cast some fantastic people in different roles so far, but I get the feeling that this one's going to be the biggest one. I think everyone loves the villains more than they love the heroes or even some of the side characters, so I've definitely put a lot of thought and effort into this particular section and making sure that every single casting decision was kind of bang on, so I'm really excited to unveil my picks.
Yeah, I'm very excited. This is probably the one that I've maybe chopped and changed and laboured over the most, and gone back and forth and all maybe not. So this is going to be an interesting one.
Absolutely. And people watching at home, we have a list of characters. They'll be in the description again. Don't jump ahead, but you'll be able to see who we're going to be talking about at what points. Just in case you're wondering, are we going that far into the books? Are we talking about a character we didn't think we would? How did this person end up in this video? Plot, hint, twist, Rita Skeeter. It happened, but she's kind of an antagonist of sorts. So this, I think, is going to be a fun one. And for those at home, please do comment with who you want to see in these roles. If you've watched our first few videos, a massive thank you. They seem to have gone down well. No one seems to hate our picks. We've had a lot of fans commenting actors they want to see return, other actors they want to see in the roles. So do continue that for today. I'm going to be really interested to see not only what actors people are going for, but maybe the character as such and what we think could change or might change. And I guess we'll give that little prelude before we talk about these. And there might be a lot of characters today when some people are like, who the hell is that? Were they in the films? Yes, they were, and they were glorified extras at many times. So yeah, it's gonna be a fun one. If you want to find out about other videos we're doing, because this is the last Harry Potter one, I guess, until there's actually news, until there's actually casting announcements, or maybe there's some filming or something, we will look to do more Harry Potter stuff in the future. But it's got to be the right video for the right reasons, not just anything for the sake of it. So if you'd like to see other Harry Potter videos, maybe comment what you'd want to see as well. But that being said, let's get this going, shall we? We've got a long list, and like the other ones, we'll do the same order. We'll do myself, Tayte, then Paul. I mentioned we're doing some villains. I know that episode 2 we did family, but what happens when you cross a villain member with a family member? We have the Dursleys. They need no introduction, but I'm just going to jump in if we do Petunia first. Of course, Lily's older sister, who, we had the... I'm going to say this, even for all three of them, because we're even going to cast Aunt Marge. This is probably one of the toughest castings I've done over the whole series we've done together, because the Dursleys were nailed in those first films. I don't think you can recapture that. And if I'm really honest, I've really struggled to find actors at a caliber that we had before, like so Richard Griffiths, even Harry Melling, who has developed into an incredible actor post Harry Potter. The Dursley family are kind of some of the funnest parts of the series, and they're going to have a really big role, particularly in the first season, and they probably will pop up at all the other seasons if they do follow this through. So going about Petunia, I've made a somewhat controversial call. I want to switch something around. So she's older than Lily by, I think, like 2 years, right? And in the Deathly Hallows, they speak of, in Snape's memory, obviously you've got to think Lily's in it, Petunia's in it. That's something they didn't know when they did the films, and I guess that's something they didn't know until halfway through the films. Something I prefer the look of is if Aunt Petunia was younger than Lily, Petunia wrote to Dumbledore, basically being like, "Where the fuck's my Hogwarts letter? I'm desperate to come to Hogwarts." That's the reason she's so bitter and hates her sister. Is the fact that her sister got in and she didn't. Now, I think that's better if you have someone younger, only by a year or two, that you know what it's like at school with an older sibling. You want to be able to match them. So I think if you're setting this character off in this path where they are going to be jealous from day one, I think we have to look no further than a younger actress. And I say younger, if we're going age appropriate to the books, which I'm trying to do with my casting pieces, Aunt Petunia is going to be in like her early 30s by the time of Philosopher's Stone because Lily died so young. So I've gone in with a risky one, and I'm going local. I'm putting Sophie Turner in as Aunt Petunia because she has the private school background. She has the upper class. Joan has been a very good series which has come out recently. She's done a lot more dramas. She's going to be Lara Croft, apparently. I saw that on the news recently. I think she would absolutely nail a somewhat middle upper class young parent spoiling the child for a couple of seasons. Can you see her being the evil auntie? I think you can. So I'm putting Sophie Turner as Aunt Petunia.
In those later series of Game of Thrones, she absolutely could play that bitter, twisted character very well. So I could absolutely see that. So I really like that pick. I like the idea as well of her being younger. That I think works better. I didn't go that route, but I think that I agree with you. That does work better. I just thought of a bitter, twisted actress who has been bitter and twisted in pretty much every single role that she's done. She's fantastic in everything. She steals scenes, steals the show in absolutely everything. So I've gone with Ruth Wilson, who would be an absolute just evil stepmother kind of character, would have that sarcasm down to a T and would torture Harry on a daily basis. So I went with her.
Ruth Wilson may reappear. So I would actually make her older than she's meant to be in the books, so that there's that kind of gap. Suddenly there's this new person, she's the favored child, she's the magic child, so that you've got that kind of older parent authority. And it's mainly so that I can cast absolute legend Sarah Lancashire. I think she's a great actress, and she's so good at playing really uptight roles. If you think about any role I've seen her in, she's really good at playing like really brittle. And I think she could do something that was a bit different from Fiona Shaw, but still has that kind of, in the nicest possible way, Sarah Lancashire, I can imagine you'd abuse a child. I can see it. I'm sorry. I love you. You're a great actress. I can visualize you doing that. I'm sorry.
No, I like that. Okay, let's go Vernon, which is going to be. I really struggled with Vernon. I had Aunt Petunia nailed down from the get go, guys. I'm not going to lie. And I've really struggled with Vernon. And I thought long and hard, and maybe it ends up being a weird double act when you get to Aunt Marge. But again, because I've gone for younger of Sophie Turner, right? Vernon, I want a couple of years older, if that. And I've not been able to get that like traditional middle class, like I'm the best girl in the street. Look at me in my new car. That sort of vibe. And the one thing I want to add is I hope the opening episodes, the opening scenes aren't them dropping Harry off, but we get the whole day with the Dursleys because I think there'd be some great comedic moments. I think I said that last time, but I'm casting Jack Lowden, which is a very weird pick because he's quite young. I saw an interview with him. It might have been on Graham Norton or someone recently. And he was speaking in his normal Scottish accent, and he was sort of saying how he doesn't really get to have fun with it, doesn't get to have sort of fun with roles. He's so used to doing these accents, this, that. And I just thought, because we're doing this, I was like, he fits the age. I think he's a very good actor. Technically, I guess, right, he's Sauron to be when they get there. A spoiler alert for season 2 opening scene of Rings of Power, but I think he could have a lot of fun in this role, and I'm more looking at the pairing of him and Sophie Turner, and I just see something there. It's not my favourite pick. I really struggled with Vernon. I don't think we'll ever top what we had before, if I'm honest.
I think we sadly can. And we've mentioned this actor before, but this was my second casting choice behind Noel Fielding. Matt Berry.
Oh, thank God. I thought you were about to say James Corden. I was
No,
like,
Christ, no. Matt Berry as Vernon Dursley would steal scenes. He would be phenomenal because you could absolutely imagine him just like clipping Harry over his ear and just like giving him
Sunday,
what
Sunday,
for.
no post on Sunday.
That's the one.
I can't picture him spoiling his son. Unless you cast a junior Matt Berry, like Mini-Me.
I think you 100% could pitch that,
Oh,
but
I like that
I
pick.
just see him as that kind of character actor that could really ham it up and really just give it a go and just, you know, give out those moments of kind of, you know, aggression, but also those moments of pure comedy. Because as much as we hate the Dursleys, they are comedic characters. They're horrible comedic characters, but they are comedic characters, and Matt Berry is that persona, is that personality.
You have ruined my Japanese gopher joke. You're not allowed to use magic outside of school. I quite like that one. So, I remember the description of him being like beetroot red. Like, I just remember that being his description, that he's a really aggressive, angry guy. And I was thinking, who's good at playing angry? Who's currently cropping up in absolutely everything around the world? He's cropping up in the Monsterverse. He's cropping up in Batman. He's cropping up in Chernobyl. Who played possibly soap opera's most evil man ever? I am casting Alex Ferns, aka Trevor from EastEnders. Right now, for people who don't know British soap operas, Trevor was the abusive husband of Little Mo. Right? He was the worst human being ever. He played the commissioner in The Batman. He was in Godzilla Kong, but
Andor.
he was in Andor, but he will always be Trevor from EastEnders. Hey Mo, I think you like gravy. And I could just imagine him being like, "It's a fine day, Sunday. There's no post, Harry." I could just see him being a lot like Trevor. He'll always be Trevor. I don't care what he does. Every time I see him, I'm like, "You abused Big Mo, Little Mo. I'll never forgive you. How dare you?" But Alex Ferns is, I think, a perfect choice for Uncle Vernon. He'd be a darker version. He wouldn't be as sort of funny as Richard Griffiths, which I think might work in the show's favour as well. But also, I love the idea of a booming Scottish accent.
I mean, just a shout out to Richard Griffiths, who I think is not underrated in that, but you rewatch them and it's when Harry's getting all the burnt post, and it's the nodding the head, the smile, and just throwing the letters into the fireplace. I don't know why it's such a funny image, but as a kid, that's how I found out there was no post on Sundays. That's what the films taught me at a very young age, until we now get posts on Sundays. But if this is set in the 90s like it should be, let's go old school. But okay, more of a jokey one, Aunt Marge, who's going to appear in, obviously, Prisoner of Azkaban. Bulldog breeder, because that's our type of bulldog we have. So I'm always happy about that a bulldog pops up. And she's actually mentioned in the first couple. So if they wanted to bring her in earlier, they could. And I think they'd write, like, they'd never leave Harry with her because Harry was scared of the dogs. Like, the dogs would chase him up a tree and hide there for a day. So I mentioned I had a weird sadistic double act with Jack Lowden. Let's just put Saoirse Ronan in. Let's go so far against type of what you'd expect Aunt Marge to be, right? Because, listen, we had the Trunchbull player before. You can't redo the Trunchbull. So let's go for that fierce, upper class. Okay, the Irish accent and Jack Lowden maybe isn't going to work as siblings, but Vernon's got to be afraid of his own sister, and I think there'd be something far more fearful if she wasn't necessarily a physical threat, and it'd just be a fun way to get them on screen together. So that's my very average, quick guest episode pick.
That's an interesting trio. I would be intrigued to see that. I just don't know how it'd work.
It's so different to the others, but I just think if you're expecting someone to be horrible and essentially emotionally torture and cripple this boy, I know this is set in the 90s, but I think it would be the uptight middle upper class now compared to, because if it was set today, people would just pick like a chav, or they'd pick something really that wouldn't work. But I just think there's something more terrifying about, I don't know, not calling them snobs because that's really unfair. But then they're not.
Yeah.
They're not.
So I went down that route. I picked someone who is very close to the heart of Swindon, that is, and I've gone with Daisy May Cooper. And I want her in this country form. I don't want her in her other comedic form. I want her to pretty much be a proper Swindonian resident, who is, you know, brother and sister to Matt Berry, who is very kind of with the posh accent and everything like that. But I want her to be the complete opposite. I want that to be the comedy duo that comes up on screen.
I quite like that one, especially when she laughs on Never Mind the Buzzcocks as she cackles. So I've gone for someone. My thing would be the episode that starts season 3, because in the book it's a week. She's there for a week. It's a week of her systematically just being the worst. So it's not like one night and he loses his temper. In the book, it's day after day after day, morning, noon, and night. She's just chipping away at Harry until he loses control. So I want it to be that first episode to be one episode. In fact, if I had my way, the episode would end with him getting to the leaky cauldron. That would be where the episode ends. So you've got a good 40 minutes with this actress. And I've gone with Emily Watson. Fantastic in things like Angela's Ashes, things like that. I just recently saw her in the Cillian Murphy film Small Things Like These, where she plays a mother superior. She's great at playing stern, horrible characters, and I think she'd make a good. You'd believe her as a sister to Alex Ferns, but also somebody who, again, she's kind of a small woman that projects an authority that you think, yeah, even someone as big and imposing as Alex Ferns would be intimidated by this woman.
Excellent. A lot of fun. Like I said, it's the family dynamic. I think this is what's made the series fun is when we get to cast families, and sort of sticking with families. We're going to go to the Gaunts now. Now, for people unfamiliar, this won't be the first time we talk about the Half-Blood Prince being a crime tonight, the adaptation. But if you don't know who the Gaunt family is, I won't say pause the video, go read Half-Blood Prince and come back. But this is the Voldemort's grandparents. This is the wizarding side of his family. These are the heirs to Salazar Slytherin. If we go all the way back to our episode 1, we cast a Slytherin. So bringing the Gaunts in is something that I think is inescapable for the books, because it's a huge part of the Half-Blood Prince. When they're going to all the when they're doing all the Pensieve moments, you find out about not the Horcruxes, but when you know what the Horcruxes are down the line, they were all important parts, and Dumbledore spent all these years trying to figure out, this is every memory I've got from someone that knew something that had something to do with Tom Riddle or Voldemort. This is what I've got. So we're going to get some time with the Gaunts. Now, we're going to start with Marvolo Gaunt, who is his grandfather, who essentially abused his mum, favoured his uncle, treated the mum like nothing, and I believe from memory he was sent to Azkaban for murdering muggles. I believe, or was it Voldemort and pinned on his granddad? I don't know. It was one of the two. But the ring that obviously Dumbledore has, which is killed, is the Slytherin ring. It's a family. No, sorry, the Gaunt ring. It's a family heirloom. So I'm thinking, okay, if we're going to get it, maybe he'll be in 2 or 3 episodes, but it's going to be essentially a guest star across 3 or 4 scenes in the whole thing. And I want someone with a lot of gravitas. I want them to be British. I want them to look like, okay, are they in the Voldemort lineage? Are they in the Salazar Slytherin lineage? Now, I had Mark Strong before as my Slytherin. So these are the ultimate descendants. And Marvolo Gaunt, this is how deranged he is. When he comes out of Azkaban, he expects to find his daughter waiting for him, ready to take him home, everything's hunky-dory. But he's the one that's abused her into being like a nobody. And this is the A-lister supreme. I'm bringing in Benedict Cumberbatch as the anti-Lord Voldemort casting, because everyone is so set on him or Cillian Murphy playing the role. And whilst I think they're both superb actors, I don't think any of them would actually touch the main role. But I did think, if you could get Cumberbatch, and if you want someone who, at this point in time, will be in his 50s probably when they're making this, can slip in for a season, slip in for an episode or 2, can he do that upper class person who's actually got nothing, who's actually living in a shack, in a shithole, who controls and is abusive to his daughter, to his son, has no existence of his own grandson? I think Cumberbatch would be great, and it would almost be setting the Voldemort story in motion. And I think he would look like a descendant of Mark Strong.
That's fair. That is a fair pick. And I like the line you're going down with, and I'm intrigued now as to who your Voldemort's going to be based off that.
It's not Tom Hiddleston.
No, I was going to say. So I've gone with star power as well. We've spoken about him already, and I didn't really know much about the Gaunts going into it, so I did a bit of research and just kind of trying to get descriptive kind of things about what they're meant to look like from the book description and stuff like that. So I've gone with Alfred Molina, who we've already mentioned on the list. Phenomenal actor, but can absolutely play a real vile human being. Even in the scenes in Spider-Man 2 where he is Doc Ock, he brings the kind of the villainy to the table. So I've gone with Molina on this one.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. So yeah, I see it as sort of a couple of episodes, but when you see him, you want someone that would, in a way, make Voldemort quake in his boots. You want someone that's like, this is somebody who, in a way, if it weren't for this guy, we wouldn't have Voldemort. This is the reason Voldemort is the twisted, not even human he is now. I've gone for someone who I reckon has done telly, has done TV, and is an actor of immense power. I've gone with Robert Carlyle. I think
Fuck off. Sorry, I didn't mean to swear.
I think Robert Carlyle would be insanely intense as Marvolo Gaunt. I feel like I've trod on a toe there.
Do you know what? I'll put it. Okay, I'll tell you now.
It's the 25th anniversary of The World Is Not Enough, folks. Sorry, that's why people don't talk about Robert Carlyle enough, do they?
I love Robert Carlyle. I love him in Trainspotting. I love it. I love him in everything. I used to quite enjoy him as Rumpelstiltskin in Once Upon a Time. I feel like the minute he shows up, I could even picture his introduction. The image I have in my head of Marvolo Gaunt is sat in a chair, just being
like a wooden rocking chair.
Like a wooden rocking chair, just hands on the arms of the chair. Yes. Sinister voice being like, "Come over here," and I could just picture the person I've picked as Voldemort being someone who, even the very thought of his grandfather would make him go, And Robert Carlyle is that kind of actor. And yeah, him in The World Is Not Enough is great. He's underrated.
Telling you now, Robert Carlyle was a 50-50 with one of the other characters I'm going to be talking about later.
Really?
So he was pretty much nailed on to be my Pius Thicknesse until like today when I decided against it.
I think this is the episode where we basically get all the really fun British actors that pop up. Who's like, this guy's pure evil. Get him in a role.
Probably.
Okay. Right. Next one. Okay. I can never pronounce the name. Merope Gaunt. This is Voldemort's mother. So, sorry, Paul, I might make a dig at Wonder Woman 84, but Voldemort, the reason why he can feel no love is because he was basically consumed under a love potion, where his mother fancied the local muggle Tom Riddle. Very wealthy. You've seen the Mansion in the fourth film. Very wealthy muggle. There's this weirdo, this town freak. That's basically what Merope Gaunt is. She's been sheltered from her father for the whole thing. She's been abusive. She's basically been like a slave around the house. And only until the dad went to Azkaban did she really get something to do. And she ended up falling for Tom Riddle, who didn't like her back, took him under the wing for a love potion, maybe even married him with a love potion. And then she thought he loved her for real. Love potion wears off. He wants nothing to do with her or said pregnant child. Precisely why the whole Tom Harry thing, you can't feel love, you don't know what love is. It's a really great thing. And this is why Harper Prince, I understand why none of this could make the film, because it's such a chunky book as well. You had to make cuts, but I really, really, really struggled that the Harper Prince adaptation failed because they should have been setting up certain things in 4 and 5. They didn't. Then they had to get crammed into 6th. And a short change of that was the Voldemort origin, to which there is no excuse for it not being nailed in a HBO series. HBO want to get dark. This family, fucked up beyond belief. So, Merope Gaunt, sorry guys, she's very young when she dies. I'm going unknown. Cast a 16-year-old. Make it even more uncomfortable than what it actually is. And that's my Merope Gaunt. Sorry. It depends on... Because you can't even say pick the Voldemort actor, because there's going to be a young Voldemort, sure. But we're not doing... My Voldemort's not young. He's not a young actor. Ray Fiennes wasn't a young actor either, so maybe this one's got a nephew that could play him for the flashback, who knows?
I've definitely got a Merope Gaunt. and you kind of almost started to go down that path, and I thought you were going to go in the similar path to me. But I've chosen to go for an actress who was well known as a child actress and has only just started coming back into things. I just want to pull up her age very quickly, just so I'm aware of it. So she was born in 1995, so she'd be 28, 29 now. I'm going with Georgie Henley, who people may know from The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, who played Lucy, who's recently been in The Diplomat. But if you look at what she looks like now, she looks, I mean, just stare at an image of her. She looks like she has that kind of, not tiredness under her eyes, but she's definitely aged a lot from when we first remembered her. And that's very, very striking up against the idea of a person who is willing to go and have a love potion just to fall in love with, or to, you know, have a child with a person who will eventually end up being Voldemort. I wanted to go with an actress who could definitely have the acting chops. I wanted to go with an actress who was possibly good as a child and is only coming back into acting. The only other person I could have gone for would have been like someone like Danny Harmon or someone like that. But in the end, I chose Georgie Henley because I feel like she's got kind of, you know, she's more back in the game at the moment, and I think she could actually pull it off.
So
Nice. Love that pick.
my choice was nearly my Bellatrix Lestrange as well. So you could kind of see the look that they've got. And I've gone for someone who I think is a fantastic actress who has been around a while, but is still quite young. So they started young, and they still look young. That's the key thing. They exist in this kind of perpetual 20s, a bit like Andrew Garfield in a way. She's an actress who has done telly, has done big budget American movies. Is an actress I think is quite brave and fearless. I've gone for Kea Scodelario, Effie from Skins.
Nice.
I feel like when you pair her with who I also, she's gorgeous. Like if you're watching this, Kea, you're gorgeous. Don't get me wrong, but with the right makeup, scraggly hair. If you really gave her some scraggly hair, washed out her face, gave her some horrible clothes, she seems brave enough that she could play that role. And I feel like when you pair her with who I've got for Tom Riddle Sr., who I've got for the brother, and Robert Carlyle, I feel like you could see that she could be the put upon. And I'm thinking the second season of Skins she did, where she has the mental health crisis. I'm thinking of her in the giant alligator movie where she's fighting the alligator. I'm just thinking of these roles she's played where she's done that kind of stuff. I think she would. Again, it's not like it's only a couple of episodes, but it's the minute you see her, I think you'd be like, that's Voldemort's mum, is it? I can see why he's become how he is.
I love that pick. You are right about the hair in a non-horrible way. Was it Pirates 5 she was in when she's playing that rugged, messy person to begin with, and then it's your Barbossa's daughter. For fuck's sake.
Who am I to you, treasure?
She was also in Maze Runner franchise all the way through.
She was in the Maze Runner. So, like I said, she's in the new Senna
series that would have been out by the time. Dare I say that I don't think she's had because obviously Skins' culture is so big here. I don't think she's cracked America when she should have, and I don't think it's her fault. She just has happened to be in the films that haven't projected her.
There was one role that was vital to me picking her, which is she played the woman who got pregnant by Ted Bundy in the Zac Efron Ted Bundy movie. So Ted Bundy had this relationship while he was on trial and in prison, and he got this woman pregnant because she was like a super fan. And in it, she has like straight hair, boring clothes, great big glasses. And even though it's her, and you're like, oh, you're Effie from Skins, it's that kind of thing of like she's taken in by this handsome guy for all the wrong reasons. So if you ever see Extremely Wicked, Shockingly Evil and Vile, it's like that's the performance. But you're right about the cracking America. She's done the big things, but she's not had... I mean, the film Crawl, where she fights the alligator, is bloody great. It's so great. But yeah, I think she should be in more.
I agree. Okay, we've got another Gaunt. We next have Morfin Gaunt. So this is the uncle, the son of... dear me, I forgot his name, Marvolo, who, again, this is the lineage, right? The firstborn, he's going to inherit everything. the favourite. Now, when I've seen artist images of him, he always has a very strange, weird eye, and I can't remember the specific detail, but I'll tell you who I originally cast from now, not who I've decided against. I'd originally had Alfie Allen in, but I just thought it looked too much a bit like Recat of Game of Thrones of Heartage imagery, and I wanted to. I've had a fair few Game of Thrones, but I love Alfie Allen, but I don't want him as. I want someone not dissimilar age, but I want someone who could look in that upper class echelon, right? Look at this prestigious family I'm part of. Your family's legacy is prestigious. None of you are. And this sounds really horrible. But I'm putting Jamie Bell in mine because I think there's something about him. And with this character particularly, he is killed by Voldemort. That's like 16-year-old Voldemort. He goes down for the deaths of Tom Riddle Sr. So this guy's killed the local muggles. He's been framed by his nephew. And the memory charm is so powerful, it basically wipes him out from his brain. But he believes in himself that he did it. That's how strong the charm was put on him by Voldemort. He genuinely believes, I did kill these people. He made all of it, and he spent the rest of his days, I think, in Azkaban. Along those lines, it's very messy. Voldemort killed pretty much all his family, which you could work out. But I thought Jamie Bell, I think there's something there. And I'm looking at... I know it doesn't necessarily work too well, the son of Cumberbatch, but I think there's something there. If you get the right makeup on the pair of them, I think Jamie Bell's one of those where he's always looked... Obviously, everyone knows him when he was younger, but I still think he's got quite a young face. And I think he could just about play off the son of Cumberbatch if Cumberbatch has aged up a little bit, not a lot.
I was going to say, Jamie Bell's another actor who has almost kind of broken America, but also hasn't quite broken America. Like, always phenomenal potential, and he always pulls off every single role he's in, but I feel like he could have done more, or still can do more, if he's given the right role. I've gone with someone who I was like, okay, let's go for someone who's up and coming then, to almost contrast against the Georgie Henley pick of a person who was famous and now is less famous. I've gone with Alex Lawther, who, once again, brilliant in everything that he's in. I can just imagine him from his role in Black Mirror, or just pretty much anything that he's done. He just, he is that kind of almost wimpy but could be upper class, and definitely would be the favorite son kind of guys. So yeah, he's going places as well. I don't know if he's going to break America or not, but he's definitely going places as an actor.
Yeah, so I've gone for someone. I like the idea that maybe Merope has some potential to be a good-looking person, but hasn't had the opportunities, whereas Morfin isn't. And it makes the favouring all the weirder. And I was thinking, I want someone who could do the eye thing, who could look a little strange. And the person I've picked, a lot of it's a role I saw them in this year when I saw them in Furiosa. I've gone for Tom Burke. Now,
Nice.
He's not a huge name, but he was like the guy that trains Furiosa in the movie. And I can just see, I don't know, just the way he is when I've seen him in stuff. If he hunched over, if you gave him the weird eye, again, if you give him the clothes, wash out his skin so that it's like he's really pale, I feel like he could be someone that you could buy as also someone who could be potentially dangerous. But also, if I'm not mistaken, is there not it's either implied or something that the Gaunts inbreed? I'm sure I remember reading that.
The Gaunts and Slytherin's lineage stay inbred to remain pure-blooded. And sorry to get into really depth, but there's 28 pure-blood families, one of which is the Weasleys, who say that we're not pure-blood, we've bred outside of this. But the Gaunts are proper incest, which I think is where the Wang-Eye comes from. And if anyone's played Hogwarts Legacy, Paul, I know you're new to it, I won't go further, but there is a Gaunt in there, not one of these, but there is a student in the year group who you befriend who's a Gaunt, which is very cool because it's, they're getting there with names.
Yeah. And so I can see Tom Burke, again, you could do more. I almost imagine him being a bit like Igor from Frankenstein movies in a way. And again, you could play up, give him some makeup, make him look grotesque, like the product of incest, and almost like Merope was kind of the anomaly to all the horrible incest side effects, that she just is a bit plain, but she's not deformed. Tom Burke looks like the kind of guy that you could put makeup on, give him the crazy eye, give him the hair, and he could play that role really well.
Nice, I love that. I'm glad you brought Thursday. He was great in that. Okay, let's round out the Voldemort upbringing. Tom Riddle Sr. His son was so disgusted why he disregarded the name to become Lord Voldemort. In 6-year-old George, an anagram of Tom Marvolo Riddle becoming I'm Lord Voldemort was like one of the wildest images ever in cinema at the time. And I will say, I've cast an unknown for this because they're so young. Again, I'm going off the Merope vibe, right? And maybe when they cast their Voldemort, like what we said with Harry, cast the actor first. Bit different with Voldemort, but if they're going to do a younger Voldemort in the flashbacks, cast him, then build up his parents. But what I would say about Tom Riddle, I imagine him to be exactly like sounds like a shit pun, but exactly like the Tom Riddle from the flashback in the Chamber of Secrets. That black hair, that prefect vibe, something a bit sinister, good looking, but technically this is one of the most innocent characters in the whole series, right? He was just he grew up nearby. Some weirdo had a crush on him who happened to be a wizard, gave him love potions, raped him, had a child with him, forced him into marriage. He snaps out of it and goes on the run like this is what the fuck. And then a couple of years, 16 years later, his son kills him. So, and obviously his bone helps restore Voldemort all those years later. Great gravestone, by the way. I never saw that on a YouTube video before. But sorry, I've gone for an unknown. It's a really lame one, I know. I've got one more unknown in this video, and then it will all be over, I promise.
So, my inspiration for the character pick here comes once again from Doctor Who. Although this person has been in Doctor Who, Game of Thrones, he's been in absolutely everything. It's Harry Lloyd. And I feel like Harry Lloyd he could have played Tom Riddle Sr., he could have played Tom Riddle Jr., in my eyes. He is that kind of character. He has that kind of look. He could either go down the kind of the really kooky, weird style like he did with Baines in Doctor Who, in the great Family of the Blood episode, and Human Nature episode, or he could go for what I've seen him in other things where he's very straight-edged and just plays that. He's okay-ish good looking. He's not like extravagant, but he could definitely play that role. He also isn't a big connection, but you could definitely see him becoming
the chin.
You could definitely see him becoming the person who I'm picking for Voldemort later down the line.
Okay, it's interesting. So I've gone for the idea, that he's the local guy that's really handsome. You want someone that everyone's going to find attractive. You could also believe comes from, like a well-to-do sort of family, is well thought of, well regarded, and also someone you could believe would immediately leg it the minute he snaps out of it. I've gone for someone who at the moment is famous for playing a comic book character who is a massive man slag. I've gone for Charlie Cox. Great as Daredevil, but Daredevil is a massive slag. And I could just imagine Charlie Cox as Tom Riddle walking about the village. Chaos Scodelario sees him, falls madly in love with him. I could just picture that playing out. And, again, it'd only be guest spot in like 2-3 episodes or something. But I could definitely see him playing that role and, being the object of affection.
Nice. Love that. Okay, right. So that's the Voldemort family tree out of the way until we get to him down the line. Next up, let's take us back to an episode ago. Last week we cast Sirius Black. And another Black we're going to cast is Regulus Black. And for those unfamiliar again, this one being cut from a two-part is even more of a travesty because they got 2 films to flesh this out. Regulus Black, the youngest of the Black brothers, Sirius's youngest brother, who died at, I think, the age 17 or 18, was a known Death Eater and was basically shunned by the Wizarding community. Oh, that's Sirius. Yeah, his brother was a Death Eater too and got killed. So we are going for someone who, on the face, is a villain in a way like his brother. And actually, as the series develops, as you get to Creature's Tale, which would, again, we cast Creature last week, you find out that Regulus Black, actually, he was so disgusted at the treatment of his elf by Voldemort, and by figuring out the Horcruxes, being involved with the lake, Regulus dies taking the first Horcrux. He was technically the first person to ever know they existed. So really, we want a very young actor. Oh, this is how my perspective's gone. I want a really young actor. Now, obviously, I've cast Daniel Kaluuya, so it's going to be a Black actor too. And sorry to be disappointed, but I'm going unknown again. But the reason why is that he's so young. And I think, like with James and Lily, like with, I guess, the Marauders to an extent when they're older, a recurring theme of this is the early deaths of people, that the war took so many people, a whole generation of sorts, at a young age. And I think when the time comes, because it's so far away, you're talking the seventh one, but God knows what year that's going to be. You just need to get an unknown whenever the time comes round. But what it's got to be, it's got to be someone that can, in a guest role, have that one scene, that one moment, and absolutely nail everything. And if anyone's curious about how he dies, he is dragged down to the bottom of the lake by all the Inferi, which, if you want an even more disturbing thought, are made up of the Inferi are all homeless people in the streets that Voldemort just killed and took to a lake. It's pretty disturbing. And I guess technically, and technically he's, I guess he's one of the ones sort of grabbing Harry. But yeah, pretty disturbing afterthought. But I think Regulus Black, I know I put him in here, but it's just one of those that when you're going for the villains, it's the tragedy of the Black family, isn't it? That there actually were a couple of good ones.
So down to a similar line of, who I cast based on, who I cast in the previous one. So Sirius Black, I cast as Dev Patel. I have gone with a similar actor of a similar heritage. So I have gone with Sacha Dhawan, who is known for playing villains, and for just a single scene or even just one episode that's dedicated to him, I think he could play he's a Death Eater, but actually in the end, he could also be a good guy. He has that acting range, whether you've seen him in Iron Fist or whether you've seen him in Doctor Who or any of his other projects. He tends to knock it out of the park every single time and just be a live wire on the screen. So I've gone with Sacha Dhawan.
Yeah, I mean, I struggle with this one. So I've also gone for an unknown. Get someone who looks a bit like Cosmo Jarvis. And yeah, like you say, the recurring theme is that young people are being killed and dying in this war. So yeah, I think, and like you say, it'd be like 1-2 episodes or something, and you could potentially seed it earlier. But yeah, I've gone for an unknown as well. I struggled with that one a lot.
That's fair. That was my unknown, so I've done 3 in this video, and it feels like a cop out. But I've really tried it on the edge, and the marketing of the most authentic show ever, how they're calling it. But getting off the dark arts for a bit, let's talk Rita Skeeter. Some people might be shocked she's in this video, who really is one of the antagonists of the Goblet of Fire. The films did a great job with Miranda Richardson for the scenes they had with her, and she's very entertaining in them. And something the books really doubled down on well was not just how much of a fraud she is. She is literally the Sun, the worst columnists, the phone hacking dilemma. And if you guys want to know a little bit more, the reason why she gets all the stories and was finding out everything, because in the book, it's the entire year she got banned from Hogwarts, and she was still getting exclusive stories to everything that's going on. And the reason why, she's an unregistered animagus, and she turns into a beetle. And Hermione finds this out. Kidnaps her, and keeps her in a jar for an entire year, which, film Hermione's never going to do. Emma Watson, you're far too nice to do that. But there's Sadistic and there's basically Mad-Eye Moody Volume 2, and the only reason they let her go is so she can go and write the article in the Quibbler, going back to Xenophilius Lovegood we spoke about last week. She does one article in the Quibbler, which is Harry in the Order of the Phoenix saying, guess what, folks? This was all real. This is what happened if Voldemort died. So I think you're getting someone who's going to have a heavy role in the 4th season, and it's going to crop up in the 5th, 6th, and maybe 7th in little cameos here and there. So I want someone with a comedic background. I want to keep that going from Miranda Richardson. And I want someone who can do humour, but can do sharp humour, and is going to have a bit of authority while at the same time knowing if you think she's a bit of a fraud, she's going to be really saying she can do something when she really can't. So I'm going to something we spoke about last week. I'm putting somewhat of an IT grad reunion and putting Catherine Parkinson in mine, who I think would be great in this role, because you got to think, yes, she's a dreadful journalist. There's a lot of fun to have. Can I see her sticking her face in where it doesn't belong with students? Yes. Can I see her pretending to be a journalist when she's really not? Yes. I think she'd be great. She's done a lot of drama. She's a very, I think, actually underrated actress, but I'm going back to those comedic roots with the two.
I like that pick a lot. I've decided to go a slightly different direction with Rita Skeeter. Now, this was also one of the first people that I cast in, which is very unusual, and it hasn't moved at all. But I decided to go very early on with, instead of someone who speaks fast, tells the news fast, and is very kind of in your face, someone who instead is just a very slow and kind of twist the knife journalist instead, who asks the awkward questions in a slow way to draw you in and to get you to give the answers. And I don't read into this too much, but I immediately think of the TV series Sex Education, and I think of the scenes where Gillian Anderson is having her sex clinics and how she is talking to the different kids or talking to the different people about their sexual health problems. And it's done in such a slow and torturous way that it feels like she is interviewing them to publish things afterwards. And I feel like Gillian Anderson is one of those kind of queen, kind of above all else actresses. I know that she's not really British. She is American, but, you know, almost naturalized British at this point and has a British accent whenever she wants to put it on. But I could just see her being in the costume, doing those interviews, getting really kind of, you know, just twisting the knife with questions and everything like that, getting really personal about it, and having so much fun with the role.
I like that one a lot. If I remember correctly, didn't J.K. Rowling say that she based Rita Skeeter on Piers Morgan?
Yeah,
I love that.
And now she signs with them online all the time.
Can we cast Piers Morgan in drag for it, or is that a bit...
He's the pigeon lady from Home Alone.
I love that every Christmas that same thing comes up, and every year he's like, "I'm not the pigeon lady," and it's like, no, the pigeon lady helps a little boy. I've gone for someone who I think is a great actress who can do a wide variety of roles, wide variety of accents as well. I've gone for Andrea Riseborough.
Nice.
I'm thinking of her mainly in Matilda, the musical film, where she's putting on like a bit of a Cockney accent, and I could just see her playing that role again. That kind of in-your-face tabloid thing. It's a fun role, and I think that she would have fun with it as well, because especially in Goblet of Fire, where there's a lot of darkness, Rita Skeeter is a lot of fun, and I think she'd come in, you know, it's a guest spot across a couple of episodes, a scene here, a scene there. I think she'd have a lot of fun with it and could do something quite outlandish.
Nice, love that. It's a fun role, as you said, and yeah, it gets weird. We are soon going back to the Dark Wizards, where it might make it's a bit all over the place, but it's a bit fun of the tones. But we've got another random one, a villain of sorts. We've got Griphook, who's played by not just Warwick Davis and Deathly Hallows, but Vern Troyer in The Philosopher's Stone. This is the goblin who takes Harry to the vault, which obviously no one knew 7 years later would play such an important part. And with that in mind, I know I cast Warwick Davis as Flitwick again, and I was conscious of that. I'm not casting Warwick Davis as Griphook. Obviously, we can't recast Vern Troyer as Griphook. But I thought, who could maybe pop up within Warwick Davis? Who's been put on a lot of stuff with Warwick Davis recently? I'm going with his son, Harrison Davis, who's now starting to act. And yes, it's nepotism, okay, fine. But there could be something about, I think he's like a teenager, late teens of his early 20s now, maybe, because he did play a role as Wicket's son in episode 9 in a very, very, very quick cameo. I just thought, you know what? He's got a harmless little role in the first film. One scene and done, right? But I would like there to be a continuity getting to this one, because it is always weird when Griphook's like, yes, I remember you all them years ago. Everyone else is like, you had a really high-pitched voice. That's if we remember you. Like, you weren't the same. You weren't Warwick Davis. So I want someone that can pop in season 1 and again in season 7. And I just think maybe if his son's going to keep acting down the line, I'm sure we'll see Warwick Davis return at some point. Paul, what you mentioned with his acting agency, I know I made a joke saying whenever he goes to Comic-Con now, he brings his son and daughter with him. But that actually does happen. So, yeah, I could easily see Harrison getting one of his roles.
I'm playing devil's advocate on this one, purely because I've cast Deep Roy as Flitwick, and I'm going to cast someone who I think would do a mocap job for this one. And I've gone with the face, because the face it's quite striking. It's not your standard kind of, yeah, it definitely sticks out amongst the rest. So I'm going with Stephen Merchant. And I know that he is like the tallest person in the room, but at the same time, I'm thinking of purely the face here, and I'm thinking of the acting performance that he could put on as well, and the menacingness that he can give for it. Not for any of his comedic roles. Well, I mean, Jojo Rabbit is a comedic role, but him as the Gestapo was terrifying, if not hilarious. So I'm going with the terrifying but hilarious approach for this one.
I can't believe you sold me on Stephen Merchant playing a goblin.
It works though, doesn't it?
It does.
Stephen Merchant may reappear. He's played a fairy, to be fair.
Are we gonna? Can we get like Carl Pilkington and Ricky Gervais all just playing random goblins in like a little podcasting room?
And then they went and they stole the cup, but the cup kept duplicating, and then Ricky just go. So, I have gone for an actor this time. I know I said get an unknown for Flitwick. I have gone for an actor who has had 2 big films out this year. 2 one-scene roles in both of these films, but he was in Blitz, and he was in the much maligned, because it's crap, Joker Folie à Deux. I've gone for Lee Gill, who people will probably know, playing Gary Puddles. The you was always nice to me, Gary. I don't like Joker 2. I don't really like Blitz, but I do think he is a good actor. And in Blitz, he plays someone who rallies people in the undergrounds when they're hiding from the Blitz. And he has an authority about him when he's doing this, that he can rally people. And that's the kind of authority I want for Griphook. You know, he's kind of somebody you need when he says things to Harry in the 7th one. You need to believe that what he's saying is the absolute truth. So I've gone for Lee Gill. And also, yeah, just every time I think about him in the Joker movies, it makes me laugh.
Yeah, the courtroom scene is second.
Why are you so horrible? Why are you so mean?
Tate's still not seen it. Great advert, Tate.
I still haven't seen Joker Folie à Deux, so or
You're not
Folie à
missing
Deux, or whatever it's been called.
Folie à Deux. Yeah.
I would add about Griphook. I know I mentioned Vernon Troy. I'm pretty sure, just going off my head, I think Warwick Davis dubbed him in the first film because it sounds like Warwick Davis now it's playing in my head.
I think he did because obviously Vernon Troy is American.
Yeah, and no Americans allowed. Maybe that's probably why.
Going back to my Stephen Merchant pick, now that I'm thinking about it, I feel like Ricky Gervais would be a good pick for Vernon Dursley. Possibly.
He would be.
Oh, HBO is how he could swear.
Yeah. Could you imagine?
Getting that. He'd literally be like,
get in the fucking cupboard.
Oh. And he'll have a podcast. If it's current day, he'll have a podcast. There we go. It makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
When Dobby's doing stuff, he can just be like.
Well, surely at that point you cast Carl Pilkington as Dobby, but just keep him as Carl Pilkington. You don't actually make him into Dobby.
Harry, just don't go Hogwarts because like bad, isn't it? Just don't fucking go, mate. Just don't fucking go.
I love Carl Pilkington. Idiot Abroad. Anyone's ever seen it? Please watch Idiot Abroad. Okay, let's go one more. Gellert Grindelwald. So, guys, 4th time lucky, maybe? For those, 5th time, actually. 6th time if you cast Jamie Kammerbauer. Grindelwald's a character that's, as we now know, has cropped up as many times as James Bond has, which is outrageous. And something I venomously dislike the films did was give him a dirty ending where when Voldemort essentially works out the Elder Wand, who had it, who could have had it, etc., he goes to interrogate Grindelwald. And I wouldn't say it's a redemption of sort because he's imprisoned in his own prison he created after the loss in 45 by Dumbledore, his lover, because they're still too scared to say that on screen, but decide to tell everyone online that he's gay. And it's really tricky casting this role because in my head, the way I approach this, I don't know if I messaged you to this, so sorry for putting you on the spot. I feel like in a flashback, and this still pisses me off about Fantastic Beasts, I'm sorry. 1945, Grindelwald versus Dumbledore. The first time they've seen each other in 30 years. Dumbledore refused to duel him, to approach him. He's in love with him. He can't bring himself to take down the person he loves most, and he's afraid. And he's got the fucking Elder Wand, his lover, who he needs to defeat in combat. So they have the quote, the greatest duel ever known within wizard time, wizard kind, whatever you want to call it. I'm basically thinking Anakin versus Obi-Wan in Harry Potter. That's my understanding. That's how I've sold it in my head. George Lucas said something happened. He became Darth Vader, the greatest jewel on a volcano planet. That's on record going back to the 80s. He mentioned a volcano and Darth Vader. So I've always had this in my head. And if I'm honest, when they announced Fantastic Beasts, I didn't care. When they said it's a 5-film series about the Deathly Hallows, I was like, I'm in. I don't know why it's Fantastic Beasts, but I'm in because I want the Grindelwald trilogy. So whether they want to do a flashback, maybe we'll get younger Dumbledores. Maybe Jude Law might pop up. I know we've all cast a Dumbledore each. But Grindelwald, he's defiant till the end. He refuses to give up the fact that Dumbledore has the Elder Wands. But Voldemort basically cracks inside his head, finds out the truth, then kills him on the spot. So it's basically one scene, plus any flashbacks they would like to do. And I was thinking of European actors for this. And then I was thinking, do I bring back Colin Farrell? Because I've got a conspiracy that Colin Farrell was cast as him and just dipped out straight away. Do you bring back Johnny Depp? No. Do you bring back Mads Mikkelsen? And he was on my list until about 10 minutes ago. I'm sticking with someone who has German heritage, so I'm getting some form of Germany in there. And people might be most familiar with his failed insignia of 3. I'm putting in Michael Fassbender. On the premise that if we were to get a flashback, I'm not asking you guys to do this now. If we're going to get a young flashback, can we chuck in James McAvoy's young Dumbledore? Done and dusted, thank you. But you could age up Fassbender, and I could see him in that prison, in that really tough, I'm not going to break, but I'm still going to ultimately die. It's a minor role, but mine more comes down to please give us the jewel you told us about all them years ago, and you fucked up a franchise in which you could do it. Imagine George Lucas fucking up Star Wars 1 and 2 so bad they didn't let him make Star Wars 3.
Yeah. Imagine if we got a flashback episode where they just show the jewel and they just do that history into one episode. That would be insane.
It was the fucking Grindelwald trilogy was not hard to say on paper, was it?
I know.
Like,
anyway, my pick's Hugh Laurie. That was kind of outed last episode.
Sorry.
It still hasn't changed. I feel like Fry and Laurie is kind of the best way forward. Stephen Fry is my Dumbledore, so Hugh Laurie was the obvious choice for being my Grindelwald. They love each other, but also, they have to fight each other and defeat each other. So it works. He doesn't have the European heritage, but he would do well for a scene or two and a flashback maybe.
Yeah, so I've gone for someone, like I say, it's one scene, but it's a major scene, and it's somebody who I think needs to be able to hold their own against who I've got as Voldemort, because Voldemort's the scary guy, but you need someone who's even scarier or who's a different type of stern. So I want someone who, when Voldemort says, "Tell me about the Elder Wand," this Grindelwald would be like, absolutely not. I'm not telling you anything. Like you say, defiant to the end. And someone that you could believe Hugh Laurie legitimately would still probably hold a candle for. I've gone for Christoph Waltz. 2-time Oscar winner. Christoph Waltz. Get him with the scraggly hair. Even though he's short in stature, I could just imagine him, Voldemort being like, and when we get to my pick, he's got quite an intense voice. I think, anyway. Christoph Waltz, very calm. And I just like the idea of it. That's why I liked Mads Mikkelsen as Grindelwald, more than Johnny Depp. I thought Johnny Depp was actually not bad. I think he was as bad as he had been up to that point in the stuff he'd been doing the 10 years prior. But I thought Mads Mikkelsen was a much better, calmer, I'm fully in control. And I think Christoph Waltz has that similar sort of thing. I'm thinking again, like his role in No Time to Die, where he's doing the Hannibal Lecter thing. You get him in the cell. I'm not going to tell you a single thing. I can just say it, and I think it would be great to have just one scene. Don't even credit him. Don't say he's going to be in it. It's a surprise role. Christoph Waltz.
I almost picked him because I was looking at his moustache from Django and the moustache from my Dumbledore. But that's a fun little one. Let's stick with Europe for a bit, shall we? We've got Igor Karkaroff. We did Madame Maxime last time. Karkaroff, head teacher of Durmstrang, an ex-Death Eater who basically fucked them all and dobbed them all in. Basically, when it came to being sentenced in the Wizengamot, they call the courtrooms, he was just giving them name after name after name after name because that man was scared. And then he bagged the job as head of Durmstrang, and apparently was a great head teacher, loved by his students. Obviously, he gets a big role in Goblet of Fire, and then the moment Voldemort returns, the man is on the run because, he, dobbed everyone in that was working under him. So if you really think about it, he's on a cowardly level of Wormtail. And I wanted someone that can act. I wanted someone that's going to have a bit of a presence. If they get their hair a bit longer, they're European. You can pitch them as a head teacher, having that respect. And he performed in one of my favourite films of all time, playing one of the greatest F1 drivers in history. I am putting Daniel Bruhl in. I know he's become the go-to German actor, but I genuinely could picture him. You think about shoulder-length curly hair with him, right? Get him to grow a goatee. I know he's done Marvel now. I know he returned to Marvel. But I think he could play that fear side of it as well as the look at me and my stature I made out of it. And then you can go to the flashback of him getting sentenced. I could picture him groveling, naming everyone. And the names, for example, that he ousted was Bellatrix, was Barty Crouch Jr., Bellatrix's husband, and he's one of them. He could have a little bit more of a role, and guess what? He gets killed, I think, at the start of Half-Blood Prince. Like, they read it in the paper, like, guess what, guys? They finally found his dead body. I'd like to see... I almost said, I'm in Daniel Bruhl.
Mm. So I've also gone with a European actor, but I've gone for someone who's more, not menacing, but has bigger stature, shall we say, is a bit more of a presence physically on screen. And I think back to one role and one role only, and that is the Queen's Gambit and the role of Borgov, who was Marcin Dorosinski, who is a great actor. You may not have seen the Queen's Gambit, so you may not know who he is. He is the ship or submarine captain in the opening scene to Dead Reckoning Part 1. That's who he is, because as soon as I rewatched Dead Reckoning Part 1 this month, I was like, oh my god, it's the guy who I've literally just picked to go onto my list as my Igor Karkaroff. I mean, apart from that, I haven't seen him do much, but as Borgov, he was fascinating, very quiet, very menacing looking, but has great stature, is a tall bloke, and could probably show off, that kind of menacing but silent kind of role very, very well. Could easily believe him to be a Death Eater, could easily believe him to be a Death Eater who outed other Death Eaters.
Nice. I like that one. Karkaroff was the character in Goblet of Fire I liked the most because he's so outlandish. He looks like Rasputin. That scene where he's calling out all the names in the flashback is great. So I've gone for an actor who's probably quite unknown. He is in Marvel films, but he does a voice role in Marvel films. But if anybody's seen The Last Voyage of the Demeter, I've gone for Serbian actor Stefan Kapicic. So he is the voice of Colossus. He also does the facial motion capture. But he is in The Last Voyage of the Demeter. He has a great role in it where he becomes possessed by Dracula and starts chasing this kid around the place. And in Last Voyage of the Demeter, he has long hair. He has a beard. Obviously, he has a Serbian accent, which I think would work perfectly well for that role. I can see him playing both the nobility. You think of like Colossus's voice, where he has the authority over Deadpool, but he could also play that coward that would dob everyone in and then go on the run. And I think he's a great actor as well. I was a big fan of The Last Voyage of the Demeter. Underrated. People should check it out if they get a chance.
I like that pick. I
think that's a good one. Okay, let's stick with some Death Eaters. Now we're going to get into maybe characters people aren't familiar with, so I'll try not to take too long reading into them. But we've got the Carrows first, who appeared in the Deathly Hallows, glorified extras, and Snape took them out, and it's great. But who get, again, a lot more development. And this is more of an overview, I'm going to say, about a lot of the characters we're going to do for maybe the next sort of 15 minutes. These are all people who got no development, some of which aren't even named in the films, and I understand why. I understand why they couldn't really do the backstory, couldn't do other things, because it's the Harry Potter series. It's not about the villains. But if HBO are insistent on adapting upon padding it out to a series, when we get the big Death Eater breakout in the Prison of Azkaban, in the Order of the Phoenix, I would quite like to find out a bit more about these people across the coming years. Why are they so terrifying? Why are these people? Because the films nail Bellatrix. Everyone knows that. If you could do that to other actors in other roles, when you get to that finale, when characters are often characters, there's maybe backgrounds with them and they've been involved with other characters throughout the series, it's so much more satisfying, and I think it would do it great. So with that in mind, I've gone for much bigger names for what could be seen as small roles, but I think they will end up actually getting a lot more screen time in the show. So if I'm starting with Alecto Carrow, which is the sister, Snape's deputy, and the role they give her for their Nazi-ish takeover on academia is the Professor of Muggle Studies, so you can only imagine what's going down. And with that in mind, I've just gone for two actors I want to see as siblings who I think can have a great bit of chemistry with one another. I'll start with the first one. She was mentioned a while ago. She's got a pretty intimidating physical presence, and I could picture her with a wand doing absolute devious damage. Lashana Lynch, who I think, if you've seen Sky Sports, she's all over Day of the Jackal. That's everywhere these days. But yeah, Lashana Lynch, and I'm happy with this. I think she's got enough stature. You could picture her as a Death Eater, and age-wise, I like the idea that some of these people were in prison when they were younger because they were following this batshit wild murderer whilst they were younger as well. So yeah, that's my pick.
So I'm going to announce my two picks together because I've gone for both comedic actors for this role because I love seeing comedic actors in serious roles, and I feel like out of all the Death Eaters, from doing my bit of research, these two are known as kind of, they're like not twins, but they're, you know, jokers kind of in that same sense. So I've gone for Diane Morgan, who is more commonly known as Philomena Kunk, as in Kunk on Earth. And I've gone with James Buckley from The Inbetweeners, because as a duo, stick some dark robes on them, stick a nice little snake tattoo on their arm, and they could be absolutely vile human beings to other wizards and other people. And I know it's quite a silly pick, but I in my head, I'm like, yeah, that'd be fun to watch.
Muggle wankers! Deathly Hallows completed it, mate. Completed it.
He'd be a great Stan Shunpike.
Yeah. He is a good actor, though. I saw him on stage, and he was fantastic. But I love that bit. I just love the idea of him shouting "Muggle wankers." It's HBO; they can do what they want. So, I'm going to do mine together just because it kind of makes sense when you say them both. So, the two I've gone for is Phoebe Denover and George Mackay. I've gone for them because they've got the look of related. They're also quite young, and I like the idea that, again, playing into that idea of how awful is it that these young people are being drawn in, that maybe these are the types, you know, kind of make it relevant to today. You know, the indoctrination of young people into the far right, into fundamentalism. You know, not just the far right, but you know, you think of, not to get too political, Shemima Begum. You know, you appealing to these kids like, hey, we'll give you a purpose. Your life sucks because Muggles. If it weren't for the Muggles, then your life would be great. And I can imagine Denover and Mackay being these siblings that feel buoyed by what Voldemort, you know, they're buying what Voldemort is selling. It's the Muggles. If we just kill the Muggles, our lives would be great. If we just kill the Half-Bloods, our lives would be great. If we just get rid of Dumbledore, we can have it all. And, you know, that kind of far-right extremism, the sort that people like Farage and Tommy Robinson peddle, is appealing to those sort of people, the Andrew Tates of this world. So give it a bit of social relevance. Get these two young actors. And George Mackay's a great actor. I saw him in a film earlier this year called Femme, where he plays this homophobic thug. And he's so terrifying in it. He's fantastic. That I just think you could believe Denover and Mackay as siblings, and I think they'd make a good double act and play into that idea, the indoctrination of these kids. Because in the same way, Dumbledore's doing the same thing. Dumbledore's indoctrinating Harry and Hermione and Ron and all that lot to fight a war, and they're kids. And it's that kind of thing. Again, you play up the idea that both of these guys are kind of using the same tactics. It's just one is the good guy, one is the bad guy. So I think give it some social relevance with that casting choice.
Nice, I like it. George Mackay's great, as you said. I'll jump in with my other Carrow, because I had Lashana Lynch. I had John Boyega as the other half. Give him something to do. I like the pairing of them. As you said, it's a double act, isn't it? And I just think when they've played heroes, you know they're going to equally have fun as playing villains, and I want British villains, so yeah, get these two on the board. Next up, we've got Antonin Dolohov. This is one that definitely gets way more fleshed out, and people know a bit more about maybe what led into other circumstances. He killed the Pruitt twins, Fabian and Gideon Pruitt. These were the twin brothers of Molly Weasley. So when it gets around to the second Wizarding War, she's also siblings than the one before. She wants to be involved this time. This time she's got a family of 7 that she's looking out for. So, and this one ends up killing Remus Lupin. Should have been shown. So Dolohov's one, by name and reputation, isn't mentioned a lot in the books. And again, seeing is believing. So when it gets around to it, please develop some of these. I'm sure you could. It doesn't even need to be developed. Just give them presents, give them time. It's small roles. I think they're the adults in the kids show. They're not going to need to be in it much. So I wanted someone I want in a small role who's maybe got a connection. And I look at another Bond villain. I know you mentioned Robert Carlyle earlier. I'm looking at Toby Stephens, who is also, of course, the son of the late, great Maggie Smith. And I just think it's a very small role, could have a bit to do with anyone. I've not seen the pirate show, but if you've seen his character, not character design, his character in it, he's got the great beard, he's got the long wavering hair. And I was like, could I have seen this guy sat in Azkaban for 12 years and he's come out? Again, it's that far right, as you mentioned, Paul, right? I've had some young people, let's get some, not older ones, but some people that would have been in the trenches of it 20 years ago. And he's got the look, and a lot of the Death Eaters are from the pureblood families. A lot of the really high up ones are from prestigious families that believe in we are above all of you. And the irony is they're fighting for a half-blood who would have them all killed anyway. So I think Toby Stephens would be great. I don't mean it in a petty or put negative sonnet, but I think as far as British talent goes, he'd at least, when all the Death Eaters are done on mine as a group, there's personalities that could come out through the actors, and that's what I'm trying to do.
With a lot of the characters coming up that we're going to choose down the list here, it was the stage where I was like, I want this character in, not just because I feel like we could actually get them in. Like, I know HBO budget and blah, 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 this is a fan cast, but I do genuinely believe that somewhere this character could be cast because they're British, they are consistently getting work, even if it isn't big work. But Jonas Armstrong, who played Robin Hood in BBC's Robin Hood, would make a great Dolohov. And honestly, you know, I could have cast him in a lot of different roles, and this is the one that it just landed on. I love him as an actor. I've been following him all the way through. He had a great run on Line of Duty when he was on there. He's brilliant. He's just constantly chipping away at TV in Britain. I think it's time that he was given a slightly bigger role with a HBO project.
Yeah, I like that choice a lot. I've gone for someone who's very big at the moment and is quite an imposing figure. I like the idea of Dolohov being a physically imposing presence. So you got, the sinister ones that are the kind of smart ones, and then I like the idea that Dolohov is again, and also almost as if he might not even be that big. It's almost like Molly's perception of him is warped by how scared she is of him. So when he appears, he almost appears larger than life. I've gone for Brett Goldstein. Love him in Ted Lasso. And he's quite a likable guy in Ted Lasso, and everyone loves him at the moment. Apparently, he is genuinely a lovely geezer. I'd love to see him play a dark wizard. Come in for, the final 2 season type things, a couple of episodes here and there. But I could also imagine Jessica Gunning, my pick for Molly, almost having recurring nightmares about how terrified she is of this guy that killed her 2 brothers. And I'd love to see him face off against Paul Mescal as Lupin. I think that would be an interesting wizarding battle.
It'd be like, oi, as he gets
That's
into the Great Hall.
Pick.
I love it.
I want that larger-than-life presence. Yeah.
Okay, let's do another one. We've got Yaxley next, head of magical law enforcement under Voldemort. Now, if you guys remember the films, this was the Scottish one who cropped up in Deathly Hallows. So I loved him. That I forgot that's his name, but I loved him. This is it, right? He didn't even get developed much, but he had something to do, so he gets a bit more memorable. And I was looking at the politician, but we've got the true politician coming next. So I've got a very boring pick here, Andrew Scott. Could this guy be making up some laws whilst working in the Voldemort's regime? Sure. Did I unfortunately just think in the last 5 seconds I'm thinking of Spectre? Yes. Andrew Scott, I could just see him playing a miserable but also interesting Death Eater. Not much to say
Peter
on this
Mullen.
one. But
Peter Mullen played Yaxley. Sorry.
Yaxley's great. Yaxley's great in it. And also the scene when he goes after Ron. This guy's got to face off with the trio at some point, and he needs someone that's got a little bit of presence for that moment. You think he's in Uxbridge's corner, so he's going to screen time with her. He's got to be able to hold his own against Voldemort. He's got to be able to hands on the pies. Yeah.
I went older. I went more menacing. And I went with someone who's already been picked for something else. I can't remember what he was picked for, but Anthony Head needs to be in this series. And as Yaxley, dear God, as any of the Death Eaters, he has that Death Eater vibe. He could absolutely, be, once again, any of the Death Eaters. And this is the thing with my experience with the films. When I watch the films, when I look at the Death Eaters, there's maybe one or two that stand out and the others are just random background extras.
Yeah.
And I've only had the books read to me when I was young. I haven't read through them back myself. So I have no personal connection to any of them, which is why I think casting the Death Eaters here was probably one of the hardest things for me to do, purely out of the fact that I have no information to go off. I have to go out online and find it, see what other people report on it and stuff like that. So as much as I have a list of great actors here, great actors and actresses here who can fill those roles as Death Eaters, it's so hard to actually pick which one's correct for which one. I have no idea if Anthony Head's great for this role or not. I just know he's good for a role. And that's where I feel like I've really struggled with the Death Eaters, because there's no character development in the films, so you can't really pitch them to anything else.
And this is a good thing, because if they were to cast an actor, then go build around it. Get that actor's personality, have a bit of fun with it. And I think, again, they're all in Deathly Hallows, but from 5 onwards, everyone's doing Voldemort's bidding. These guys are going to be seen more than he is, right? Like, Voldemort should be, like Order of the Phoenix, rock up for the last 5 minutes. So these guys doing all the dirty work. I like that. Yeah. Sorry, Paul, I jumped in before yours.
No, it's not a problem. So the person I've gone for Yaxley, obviously, like I said, I've gone, my casting across the things has been quite colourblind, and obviously occasionally to play up certain things. I've gone for an actor of colour. I've gone for an actor of colour who played one of my favourite villains of recent times. So I'm casting him as a villain again. He played a great villain, a great ethnic cleanser of types in a big franchise movie. I've gone for Chukwudi Iwuji from Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. He was great in that. He played the role so... He didn't overdo it, but he did that kind of thing where he was like, I just want things to look nice. And that bit where he screams at Rocket when Rocket's grieving the deaths, and he goes, you can scream the loudest, Rocket, you win. I can just imagine him kind of doing that, against Harry, and being someone who you can imagine is in the Ministry, has inveigled himself in there and set about, unlike the other Death Eaters who are maybe a bit more, I think about Brett Goldstein or Denver and Mackay, are a bit more gung-ho to be like, yeah, I'm evil. He's more like, well, if you want to get this done, you've got to play the long game. You've got to infiltrate and work your way through these things. And I think he's an evil, but an evil that works within management, if that makes sense, which I think Yaxley works better as. Someone who, a bit like Umbridge, can be like, I'll sit through the boring meeting about, we need to be unified, and twiddle my thumbs waiting for Voldemort's return to then say, I've set about doing this. And I think he would do such a great job at that.
Nice. I like that as well. He's a great actor. As I said, the role, it's the politician ones are fun because it's like we're doing the Ministry of Magic once again. Okay, let's go for another politician, Pius Thicknesse, who is the Minister for Magic under the Imperius Curse. Now, last week I was umming and ahhing about a certain actor. And I love the politicians. I almost went for them first, like, who could have played the leader of government at this point in this thing? We've got some great picks amongst all three of us. But this is the villain one. Yes, he's under the Imperius Curse, which means, okay, can we bring this guy in earlier? Can we have him hover around Fudge and Kingsley Shacklebolt in other films? In other seasons of the show? Maybe. Don't know how they're going to play it. But I saw that Tayte you mentioned. I put David Harewood in. I was, again, looking at that, right, could this guy be a politician? Yes. The Pius in the film, oh, God, I forgot his name. It's Guy Henry that plays him, who I loved. But it was so blatantly under the spell, he looked like a hippie. I was like, no, let's have it believable he's not under a spell. Let's have a presence. Let's have him be Kingsley Shacklebolt's rival because these are the two next. We're going to be the next Minister for Magic. One of us is a Death Eater, the other one isn't. And I'd like to play up the David Harewood Chiwetel rivalry in mind. So, Pius Thicknesse, smaller role. David Harewood was a politician acolyte, and then we're not going to get season 2, so we won't see any more from him, which is a massive shame.
So this was my debate between Robert Carlyle and this person, and I can't remember if he's been mentioned or not already, but I went with this person. You need a politician. You need to know whether they're under a spell or not. I've gone with Aidan Gillen. It's an obvious choice. It's just like it's like, who do you need to play a sleazy politician who could be, positive and negative? No, it's Aidan Gillen. I don't even need to explain it any more than that. It is just Aidan Gillen.
Yeah, no, I can see that. See, for my Pius, I've gone for someone who can we imagine is a ministry official who could be under a curse, who is a bit. The way I see this Pius is being almost cartoony in how he is a puppet. So I wanted a comedian. I've gone for a comedian who has been mentioned. I've gone for Stephen Merchant. Now, Stephen Merchant is also a good actor. If you think about Logan, where he's playing Caliban, and it's not a comedic role, but I am thinking of him in Jojo Rabbit with the hi Hitler guys, hi Hitler, hi Hitler. When they're doing that over and over again, he goes, well, we were just walking past and then we thought we'd stop in. Oh, lovely. I can just see him being that kind of mouth figure for Voldemort. And also just the fact that obviously he is very tall. Again, that juxtaposition would be very funny, and I think that it would be an interesting role for Merchant to play as well.
No, I like that. Merchant is a politician. When he did mention, I was like, he's got to be the Pius, hasn't he? Unless you're going with him as Voldemort off the ice. Okay, got one more in us. Macnair, who is going to be in it from Prison of Azkaban. He is Buckbeak's executioner. Sort of a bit, not desperate, but it's like, oh, look at you after the war. What did you end up being? Executioner. All right. This is tricky. Again, do they want to flesh him out?
Work a day in your life.
I went for someone who I just imagine to be lanky, have not a gang. I mean, you just mentioned Stephen Merchant. It's basically picked Stephen Merchant description, but not him. I went for, okay, this guy ends up getting killed by Hagrid in the Battle of Hogwarts. Like, he's had that 4-year vendetta. Like, I'm going to get this guy because he tried to kill my animal. And I kept thinking, I'd like to see someone who almost has fallen to, like, were they normal before? Could they play this weird, creepy executioner? I don't know. But again, it's what it's to take. It's tricky with some of these. I'm picking Arthur Darvillin, who everyone will know from Doctor Who, because there's something about. Could you see him holding a giant blade trying to decapitate a bird thing? I actually could. When he's like sharpening the thing and they cover his face in the Azkaban. I was like, I don't know why he jumped out to me. I don't think has anyone picked him in every episode. I can't think so from memory.
No, he was one of the only people from Doctor Who I haven't chosen in any role.
It just came to me. I was like, I could sort of see him in a weird way. He's not too expensive as an actor, but there's something about him.
Now, can you please remind me of when the character of Macnair comes in?
Prisoner of
This
Azkaban.
is very useful. So, Prisoner of Azkaban, you're a few series in. I'm not just looking for an actor. I'm looking for someone who might be able to direct a few episodes and might be able to at least do some other things, as well as having a minor role in it going forwards and really help develop it as it goes along. I've gone with Dexter Fletcher, who is a fantastic actor, brilliant director, and could play those roles either way. But once again, he could have been cast as any of the Death Eaters. He just ended up being Macnair in the end. And it helps that he's in the films quite early on because he can provide from the other side of things, whether it's just being on set and giving a hand in some way, shape, or form, or actually directing a few episodes and helping in that way as well.
Nice, I like that one. Love Dexter Fletcher. So I've gone for someone who, my thinking behind this casting is, who's somebody who, when you're in the third one, they're still kids, they're still little, it's still playing, all right, it's getting darker, but it's still playing to that kind of childlike thing. So who's someone who looks like a bad guy? But then when you get to the more adult seasons, it's like, actually, who's actually quite scary just as a human being? And I've gone for a character actor who's been in a lot of stuff. He's currently, I just looked up what he's been in. Apparently he's in Dune Prophecy, which I've not watched yet. I've gone for Sam Spruell. Now, I know Sam Spruell because he was in Taken 3. He was in Luther. He was in Snow White and the Huntsman. He played the right-hand man to Charlize Theron in Snow White and the Huntsman. He's got a very distinct look about him that in those earlier seasons will play quite well of the bad guys look like bad guys, the good guys look like good guys. But when you get to those later seasons, when it's a bit more complicated, you still have that thing of, just as a human being, he's a very scary looking man. I mean, apparently he's lovely, but he's very good at playing baddies.
I think I've seen him in Legends. He's in the Craze film. That's what I know him from most. Love that. But again, it's a bit of fun of the Death Eaters. But this is the point of the show, right? If they're making this high horse about doing this, the villains, they need to do better, because I think Bellatrix was doing so well in those films, it overshadows everyone, maybe even at times Voldemort, and they can try and capture that. I know it was over theatrical, but that's my approach. And we mentioned Bellatrix. Let's talk about some of her relatives. Let's go one of the MVPs. How, my second favourite Harry Potter character after Gellert Lockhart. How do you recast Lucius Malfoy? You got to think Jason Isaacs, absolute legend. Legend of this screen. Has a presence, comically entertaining as a villain, being able to do the pompous up itself side of things, and then you need to be able to see them act at their worst, this grovelling loser that's lost his reputation, lost everything, basically a prisoner in his own mansion come the end. And I was rewatching, I had someone else in mind, but I was rewatching a Jason Isaacs film, ironically, and I was rewatching Death of Stalin, and then I just took one look, I was like, fucking hell. Rupert Friend would make an excellent Lucius Malfoy. He's got the posture. He's got I can see him with the long blonde hair. I could see him with that upper class echelon. I could see him failing, pleading almost for his life. Rupert Friend is mine. I love this pick, and it really pairs up for Narcissa, which we'll talk about in a bit. But I couldn't get this image out of my head. Once I saw him, I almost made him the thumbnail, but I couldn't make it work.
George, guess who my pick is?
You've gone for the same.
I had Rupert Friend. I had him from the start as well. Like, there was a few names who cropped up. Like, Tom Hiddleston was in there for maybe 1 week or so, where I was like, do I go down the Hiddleston route? And I was like, no. Rupert Friend is a brilliant actor.
Yeah.
And I looked at Death of Stalin. I looked at his recent The Swan that he did for Wes Anderson, where he just acts at the screen and does nothing else. He's great. I could see him being that pompous, very much kind of threatening kind of role. And I see him as well with my Narcissa. So, yeah, Rupert Friend is my pick as well.
Excellent.
Paul, do it.
He is not my pick. I don't think we're ever going to get a trio here.
It's not happening. It's not happening.
So, I will say, first off, my original pick was Matthew McFadden. It was Tom from
so good.
Succession. It was him for ages. And then I thought, I want someone else. And this is an actor who people will think is American. He's not. He's English. But he cracked America early in his career, and that's why people think he's American. He's done these big American shows. He's done comic book show. He's done fantasy show. He's shown a lot of his arse on television. I interviewed him once, and he was an absolute delight to talk to. I've gone for Stephen Moyer, Vampire Bill from True Blood. Great in the X-Men show, The Gifted. Great in everything. He's a lovely man. If you ever get a chance to meet him, I thoroughly recommend it. I think he would do great putting on... He's actually a lot more London sounding than you think. But I can picture him putting on the upper class accent. Also, I like the idea of him in juxtaposition to Daniel Mays as Arthur Weasley, the rivalry, the thing. And I can see him doing the middle class, oh no, don't do this, oh, don't boast. I can see him doing that, but I can also see him, pleading for his life. That bit where he said, when at Tom Riddle's grave, when he's like, if I had even a slightest idea that you were still alive. I just love that idea of seeing this guy who's got a presence and then slowly it just gets chipped away. Stephen Moy is a great actor. And yeah, I think he'd do really well.
Excellent, love it, love Lucius. I've just bought Lego Diagon Alley, and two for the price of one. You get a minifigure for Gilderoy Lockhart and Lucius Malfoy. So I'm very entertained.
The dream.
Okay, how do you follow Lucius with Narcissa? The late great Helen McCrory joined us in Half-Blood Prince. She was first in it. Integral for the seventh one. First actually appears in Goblet of Fire. I'd like them to actually try and bring in Narcissa even earlier if we could. I'd like to get the pairing of the Malfoy parents in. I know Harry Potter's got a theme with the mothers basically being great and the fathers being terrible amongst months of it, but this was my original Bellatrix and I switched her over. And once I cast Rupert Friend, I was like, okay, I want someone that's in that, these two were like school sweethearts. They fell in love at school. Lucius was head boy or like prefect, one of those. He introduced Snape. He's in Snape's memories. He's actually like a final year when Snape. So yeah, I want Narcissa a similar age. So we spoke about already today. I put Andrea Risborough because I mentioned with my, I guess they're blacks to an extent. The trio of sisters I'm going for. Andromeda last week I had Gemma Arterton, but Narcissa I put Andrea Risborough, and I think there's something there where she can pull off the upper class. She can pull off being a Death. We don't know if she's officially a Death Eater, but it's her residency to which they all end up scheming from. And I think she'd pair Rupert Friend, and I think she could do the maternal side to Draco when the time comes. So yeah, that's mine, Andrea Risborough, and then obviously we'll talk about Bellatrix later.
I was trying to remember what I recognise Andrea Risborough from. It's from Oblivion. I love that film.
Yeah,
and she is in that film. Yeah, there we go. I've gone with someone who apparently they're friends in real life, so that they'll have that kind of chemistry on screen. It's another. I'm sorry, guys. It's another Doctor Who pick. It's Billie Piper. I know. But I honestly, in the things that she's been in outside of Doctor Who, that's where I see her in this role, because she's tried to kind of almost distance herself from that Doctor Who role of being kind of, the savior kind of thing. And she's gone into very kind of intense roles where she's either kind of a horrific, horrible character, or leaning more into those kind of, motherly instincts, or even the thing which she directed herself, which I can't even remember the name of, where she was just narcissistic above all else. You could see her loving her son, being faithful to her husband, but also kind of erring on the side of slightly evil and kind of towing that line within the film. You could definitely see her have that turn in the end and kind of,
I mean, she married Lawrence Fox, right? So what's to say?
Yeah, but, I see Rupert Friend and Billie Piper being a good combo on screen. I could definitely see them both being Malfoys and both being in Slytherin House.
Yeah, I like that a lot. So my pick, I've gone for someone who's actually already been mentioned for a previous role, but someone who maybe has a name as playing sort of baddies, but I wanted someone who had, the way I see Narcissa, she's not as open and loving as Andromeda. She's not as unpredictable as Bellatrix. She's somewhere in between. There's a darkness, but there's also, you need to believe her when the thing she cares about most is her. What I'm thinking about is that, there's a moment for every role that defines them as a character. Hers is when she asks if Draco is okay, and Harry says he's fine, and she lies to Voldemort as a sign of gratitude. She lies to Voldemort's face. That defines Narcissa as a whole. The thing she cares about most is her son, not the war, not the purebloods, not anything else. It's her boy. So I want someone who can do that kind of almost crying as she asks, and then stealing herself away to turn to Voldemort and lying. I've gone for Ruth Wilson. She's played, icy queen figures in His Dark Materials. She's played over-the-top villain in Luther, but I'm thinking about her role in The Affair, where you see the two sides of her in both versions. If you've ever seen The Affair, it's like Rashomon, everyone's version of events. She plays a seductress, she plays a broken woman. And I'm really thinking about that. That is the scene I'm casting for, is her turning and saying he's dead. Knowing that if Voldemort knows the truth, she could die. And I think Ruth Wilson would just nail that scene. That would be her moment, and I think she'd do great.
I think even in His Dark Materials, across the entire series, she plays that range of villain to
Yeah.
motherly figure to villain to motherly figure at the very, very end. So,
Exactly.
I can absolutely see that. That's a fantastic pick.
I love it. Okay, let's move on from the Malfoys, shall we? Let's round out the Marauders. We have. Sorry, I almost shouted Peter Pettigrew the same way Gary Oldman did, but I can't do that one.
Pettigrew.
What a scene! And this is it, right? If I'm just going to go on, so I had Andrew Garfield as Lupin. I've got Daniel Kaluuya as Sirius Black, and an unknown as James. So how do I round out the four? Now, this pick was my original Lupin until I thought I hit the jackpot with Andrew Garfield. It turns out everyone else has done it. And you got to think, this is the most cowardly person in the whole series. He was the secret keeper, betrayed James and Lily, led to their death. He grovelled for his life to Harry to be spared, whilst his old friends are trying to kill him. He's lived as a rat for 10 plus years, so he's going to be a bit strange. And he's in fear. He's found Voldemort in fear. The only reason he's gone to Voldemort is he's completely afraid. And ultimately, his undoing is he repays his life debt to Harry and is then killed by the hand Voldemort gives him. Far more graphic and disturbing than a stupid spell that you get in the film. So there's actually a lot to this character. As coward as this, there's a lot to this. But I need someone that could do physical performance, and Timothy Spall was so good at that. So perfectly cast. And I was thinking, which actor in this British actor, early 30s, this one's cracked America. In fact, most people think he's American. Paul, I thought you almost said him earlier. He's recently popped up in a great drama, playing very calm and composed. But when most Americans think of him, they think of his comedic talent in a great film with some legends. I'm putting Will Poulter in as my Peter Pettigrew.
Like that.
He could do the facial expression. He was my Lupin. I thought, he could do the Haggard this. That I was like, when I was thinking of Pettigrew, I was like, who can do a rap? And all I could think about is Will Poulter's face, which is so horrible to say, but he could do the eyebrows. It's the eyebrow. Will Poulter's mine. He rounds up my Marauders. I was really happy with that. So I quite like this pick. I think he would work. And when you get to the Shrieking Shack, mine aren't going to be thespians, but I can picture it as 4 old schoolmates and the bloke they hated just having it out.
So I guess I'd go through my Marauders as well. So I've had Andrew Garfield, I had Ben Whishaw, and I have Dev Patel. Now, this is one of my other picks where it wasn't that I didn't put too much thought into it. It's in my head, for some strange reason, a very obvious pick, and there wasn't really anything else that I could throw in there. I've gone with Alfie Allen, who's a great actor,
Nice.
but I am thinking of Reek. I am thinking of that kind of thing. I'm immediately thinking of it. I'm thinking of the grovelling. I'm thinking of those kind of parts of his acting. I'm not really looking past that, actually. I think he could just play the same character over again. And it would work perfectly fine, and people would be happy with it. People would accept it. But he can definitely play a rat, which is a horrible thing to say about an actor, because I'm sure he's a lovely person. And as a long time, thing to look back on the channel, I do believe in Alfie Allen. And I do genuinely, I think that he would be a great Peter Pettigrew, and I think he'd be great as part of the Marauders.
Like that.
Yeah, I like that. I like both of those choices. So for my one, so my Marauders was so it was Cosmo Jarvis as Sirius Black, it was Paul Mescal as Remus Lupin, it was an unknown actor as James Potter, and my choice for Peter Pettigrew is someone I think, again, the idea is that he was, kind of the hanger-on to the group. What do they refer to him as? The boy that was always following James and Sirius around. Those two had the bond, and then Lupin was also could be more objective and go, guys, you're kind of being dicks. And then there's this guy that would just be like, I want to be that guy, I want to be with them, and then could pivot to Voldemort. I've gone for someone who is famous for being a second fiddle character in another fantasy series. I've gone for John Bradley, Sam Tarley from Game of Thrones. I can see it.
He'd do it.
I can see it.
He's following Jon Snow around. He can follow them around, and they're around the right age. But the thing is, he is a very good actor, and I do think John Bradley, given the right material, he could play that role so well. He could play it in a way that you're like, I just want them to kill him so badly. So that he could play the role so pathetically that when the hand chokes him, you're like, thank fuck, this guy is dead. Yeah, John Bradley. You're a great actor, but you'd make a great Peter Pettigrew.
He could do the facial expressions and the teeth, couldn't he? All three great
what I'm
picks.
thinking.
I love it.
Once you've got him in
Okay.
makeup, once you've got him in the role, he'd be great.
Let's go for one of the tough ones. People might not think we're going to talk about this. Barty Crouch Jr. We cast his dad's last week. Forgot to cast his mom in the guest episode, but no one cares. The mystery of the Goblet of Fire. Who is Barty Crouch Jr.? Who is this bloke that was in a pensieve? He's not seen the Quidditch World Cup. He's not seen in the films. Added David Tennant to a lot more, which says a lot about how little David Tennant was in it to begin with. But this character basically has two scenes. He has scene one, which is him being exposed, pleading for his life, and his dad sentencing him to Azkaban. And then he has the scene where Mad-Eye transforms into him. And they very cryptically made a point that he's so young in the courtroom. No one could believe. They called it the best performance of all time. Everyone believed that this kid was innocent, that it was a lie by, as we spoke about earlier, Karkaroff. So I wanted an actor who's got quite a young face that you could have pictured was basically an idiot at 16. Probably a rich kid, thinks he's having a bit of fun, hiding from his dad, working with the bad guys. So Christian Bale's going to absolutely rinse this kid and send him to prison. I went for Fionn Whitehead because I do think the age works. I'm going back to Dunkirk when you've got the scenes of them in the boat for target practice, absolutely shitting himself. That whole film was about survival. And I could easily see that translating to this one selling scene in the prison because it's Mad-Eye for the most of that film. And then it's his scene when he finds out. And obviously, again, the films don't want to do it. What does Fudge do? He decides to have the Death Eaters basically kill him on the spot so he can never get interviewed to confirm it. But this is Voldemort's most loyal follower. He found him. He escaped Azkaban first. He went back to him. He did everything when he was willing versus Peter Pettigrew, who did it out of fear. And if they can nail Goblet of Fire, if they really went for the mystery angle, it's two scenes and done. But I think Fionn Whitehead's developed a lot over the years, and I think he could do it. And I could see him as Christian Bale's son.
So, in a similar way to WoW you've gone, I've got to try and cast someone who's similar to Stephen Delane in some way, shape, or form. Or at least you can believe that they're related. And I've gone down a very similar route. I've gone with probably a rich kid, did some stupid things when he was younger, but I've also gone with, hey, you know, David Tennant, of course, it was before Doctor Who, but, you know, we see him as the hero from Doctor Who. So let's go with someone who's also a hero in something else. Someone who's very unsuspecting to be that, but, you know, now he's aged up a bit. Of course, shave his beard off to make him look younger, but shove the beard back on if you want to. Colin Morgan is my pick. You know, Merlin is my pick. Yeah. Very unassuming, but you see him in anything that he's been in recently, and you can absolutely assume that he would take that darker path. That's where I wanted to go with. I wanted to go with someone who, you know, people wouldn't believe it when it was revealed. Kind of like, oh my God, it's him kind of thing. So I'm always going for a bit of shock value from British TV. Americans won't know what's going on, but all the British people would go, it's Merlin. He's evil. Okay, sure.
I like that idea. I've gone for someone who I think can play evil. Nearly played an incredibly evil role, but got pipped to the post. Can play lovable, silly, so that when they say no one would believe that it was him, you'd be like, okay, I can kind of buy that, but can also play absolutely diabolical. Someone who's already actually been mentioned this episode. I've gone for Will Poulter because he's such a nice guy. He's so lovely, but he nearly played Pennywise, and I would love that reveal at the end of the episode when my Peter Capaldi, my Mad-Eye, starts changing, and I can just see his eyebrows morphing into
those two eyebrows together.
You don't even need to show the full transformation; just the eyebrows transforming would be enough.
Going from the mad Scottish accent that Peter Capaldi has into that, and then being like, and again, because actually, when they do it in the film, it's kind of horrific to watch.
He's like in pain transforming back, isn't he?
Moody changing as his face is like blobbing up and down, and I'd be like, do that, have it be a painful morphing into Will Poulter, have, like, you know, the body parts all changing, and again, I say, his eyebrows like go into the point. That scene of him, I think, would be a great, oh my God, it's Will Poulter. And he would play psychotic so well. And I'd even say go so far as to show the Dementors coming to give him the Dementor's kiss. You know, pinning him down. I'd love to see him flailing and screaming, Harry being led away by Dumbledore. You know, I could just see the Dementor going down as the door closes and his screams like fade out. And I think Will Poulter would do so well to play that role. But the courtroom scene where you just see him, you'd be like, who's Will Poulter playing in this? I didn't know he was in it. You know, so that when Karkaroff outs him, you're like, oh, basically, you know, there's that great shot in Goblet of Fire film where it cuts to when he says Barty Crouch Jr. and it cuts to Rita Skeeter and she goes, I want that remade with Andrea Riseborough's face and then Will Poulter.
It's a great thing as well with Tennant is that when he was cast, he wasn't the Doctor. When the film came out, this guy's Doctor in a month, and it's like it was almost a Kevin Spacey in Seven that. It would have been a huge thing if everyone had known he was now the Doctor. But this is a fun one. Okay, let's go to the final three. Final three. Now, this is someone that got absolutely nothing to do in the film. It's Fenrir Greyback, who's like the head of the werewolves, leader of the werewolves. Actually, I'd go so far to say, is actually more evil than Lord Voldemort. This is somebody that isn't just a werewolf. He's the reason Lupin's a werewolf. He's turned more people into werewolves than anyone else. And even when it's not full moon and he's in his, quote, human form, he still eats the human flesh and particularly enjoys the taste of children, which is sort of gross. So this bloke is not good news, and he's going to have to be the most evil, but he has something to gain from an alliance of Voldemort. He's not very three-dimensional in the books either, but he is far more of a menacing presence there. When this guy, he mauls Bill Weasley's face to a pulp that it's unrecognisable at the end of Half-Blood Prince. Then the film's like, Fenrir Greyback. But I went for someone, if they could smile and they'd have charisma coming through a smile, it's Idris Elba. I know you cast him everyone Tayte. I could see him doing the werewolf thing. It's more the teeth. Put a bit. I don't know if he's played a vampire before. He probably has. Look at him as Heimdall when you get the great contact lenses in, particularly the image of Heimdall in Thor Ragnarok. But I'd like to see Fenrir Greyback get a lot more to do other than just kill people, and you could use that to really elevate Lupin, because Lupin is afraid and petrified of this one person. That I think he bit him because his dad had a disagreement with someone high up at the Ministry or something. There's a lot more for this character to do, and I think if they're going to develop it, this is someone we'll see more of, and Idris Elba could have their presence.
I like that because he is menacing as a character. I know he's Mike Kingsley, but at the same time, you know, he can have that menace.
Can do it.
I've gone with another person who could direct some things. So at this point, I was thinking, yeah, let's pull in a bunch of people who can go in and do directing or writing or something like that. I also, when researching this character, because of course I'd recognize him from the films, I read the things about him being like eating kids in the books and like being like almost full werewolf and kind of mid-transformation all the time. So I've decided to go down the route of, hey, we need to bring in someone who can transform. Someone who can maybe do some mocap to make it look a bit more realistic, and someone who can play those animalistic instincts. I wonder who can play the animalistic instincts of anyone in the world who's going to be able to do that mocap. So of course it's Andy Serkis. He's hairy enough anyway. You don't even need to like actually do much CGI onto him. But he would transform into that role. He has a dark, menacing voice anyway. He could come in and direct a few things, write a few things as well. I think he's a solid pick for it.
Yeah, I like that. I've gone for someone, controversially, I've actually gone for an American. But I want, for Greyback, I'd actually quite like the idea that he has a no fixed accent. That there's someone, he's almost so animal that I needed an actor who could come up with a werewolf accent. You know, this kind of no fixed, it's somewhere between human and animal. Someone who could project animal even in human form, like you say. I've gone for an actor who's been working for 20 odd years, has done big budget stuff, but is a really interesting actor. I've gone for Ben Foster.
Nice.
Now, people may know him best, Punisher, X-Men. I'm thinking of him in his one scene in 30 Days of Night, where he's barely speaking an audible language, but he looks like a homeless man. I could just see him being so unpredictable that you could put him in loads of makeup and he would look like someone who would eat kids, who would take great pleasure in it. And like I say, I'd like him to do a weird accent, a weird kind of performance where you're never quite sure, almost to the point where you're like, is this guy acting or have they just picked up a crazy person? And I think Ben Foster would nail that role.
Nice, I like that pick. It's a different one because again, there wasn't much they got to do in the films, and I get why. But again, you could really go back to even Lupin when he's younger. But okay, look, we're in the big two. These are the obvious two. Bellatrix Lestrange. No, we're not casting her husband Rodolphus. No, we're not doing the nonsense from the cursed child that she's pregnant. How do you get past Helena Bonham Carter, who I say made the role her own, quite comfortably and clearly elevate the character more than the books ever could? She outdid her in the books, and she became as big as Voldemort in the films, to the point they chucked her in the Half-Blood Prince adaptation at the end, which is a really great change, actually. One of the best changes from book to film was actually chucking her into the Astronomy Tower sequence. So I wanted to lose the over-theatrical, but I still wanted someone that's a thespian, theatrically trained in Britain, played villains, but I'm looking also at the sisters as well. I've had Andrea Risborough, I've had Joan Ralston. There's a bit of upper class Brit there. And I was scanning some of my favourite shows last few years, and I landed on a colleague of hers, for Ollivander. So I'm going back to the realms of Andor, and I'm putting Denise Gough in mine. I know most people will know her with her blonde hair, but I want someone who is more rigid in this, that isn't going to be so OTT, because that isn't necessarily her character. It's elevated by Helena Bonham Carter. Instead, I'd like to just have this psycho killer who's far more terrifying. This is someone that tortured Frank Longbottom to a pulp because it could have, should have been them, and that's the reason Voldemort's not there, was because it could have been her son and it wasn't. Do you know what I mean? It's sadistic in a scary sadistic than Helena Bonham Carter. So, has this person spent 12 years in Azkaban waiting for Voldemort to wake back up? Yes, and I think she fits in with the sisters. So, Denise Gough, it's a different one. It's not as big a name. But I think where I'm trying to put this series of all the villains is I'd rather have a lot more Death Eaters develop somewhat. I know she's higher up in that chain, but I'd like the idea of another thespian, and big up Andor as well.
Good pick. I am still 50-50, but I think I've chosen one because I've got two names written down in front of me. I'll say the one I'm not picking first. So the one I'm not picking first is Ella Purnell, because she's on fire at the moment, and fantastic British actress in everything she's been thrown into, from Fallout to including the voices that she's doing in Arcane. She's been fantastic. The person I'm going with actually has a link to my Andromeda Tonks pick. So my Andromeda Tonks pick was Sian Clifford. Sian Clifford, of course, made her name in Fleabag. So, of course, my pick for Bellatrix Lestrange is going to be Phoebe Waller-Bridge. And that's another one where she can come in from the writing side of things, but also I want her to just be constantly just giggling to herself on screen. That kind of weird kind of laughter that she has, that she's just constantly just like she's the only person who gets the kind of joke and the joke is death kind of vibe that she can give off. I think she's destined to play an evil role in something at some time soon, because she's only ever played, Fleabag, which is, the self kind of, take on things, and then Indiana Jones, where, fine, she was okay in that film. But she is destined to play some kind of serial killer or something at some point in the future. And I think Bellatrix is that role that she could actually really dig her teeth into and make it into her own.
I like that.
And can she do a Fleabag look into the camera when Sirius dies? Sirius dies, and then she looks into the camera and goes.
Yeah.
So,
even funnier,
like said,
if we manage to, can we cast in Hot Priest as well somewhere in there? If Andrew Scott's not in my cast for anything, but if they ever cast both of them in, any interactions would be hilarious.
I like that. So, like I said before, Chaos Scodelario was nearly my Bellatrix, but there's someone else I've thought of. Someone, I want someone who's unpredictable, someone who's intense, someone who you can reasonably believe is besotted with Voldemort and the concept of death and all those sort of things, who would torture somebody to the point, not even torture them to death, torture them to the point of insanity. This person is English, but people will probably know her for donning a southern accent in some very popular horror films, I've gone for Mia Goth. She is a
God,
very
terrifying.
strange looking.
Mm.
She is a very strange looking woman, gorgeous but strange, and
The
I
voice.
feel like she could. I feel like she could do something very interesting with Bellatrix. Would she commit to 3-4 seasons? Maybe not. Maybe she might. But I can see her being related to Ruth Wilson and Sally Phillips. I can see her being related to Cosmo Jarvis and all the Blacks. But more than that, I could just see her doing those kind of evil deeds and enjoying the hell out of it. And I can see people being very pleased when Jessica Gunnings kills her and she finally goes the way of all life. I think Mia Goth would be a great shout in that role.
If anyone's not heard her voice, she's terrifying on interviews. The voice is scary. That's a normal voice. Just gotta say it. Sorry. Great pick though. Great pick. Okay, right. Let's go main event. Main event time. Tom Marvolo Riddle. Zip, 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 zip. I am Lord Voldemort. Again, 6-year-old George was gobsmacked. Kind of dumb when you get older and think, did he really want the I am part in there? But okay. How do you follow Ralph Fiennes, one of the greatest, not even villainous actors of a generation, but one of the greatest screen actors Britain's produced? That's fair to say at this point. Maybe he'll get an Oscar next year. Who knows? I'm not sure. But you are following in his footsteps, and it is almost impossible to look at this role, if I'm honest, dependent on what they do with how this character is going to look. Are they going to chop his nose off and have Ralph Fiennes with slits for nose? Are they going to put the red eyes in that even didn't really work on camera for films? They made sure they didn't do it. I am going to say, please, the actor I'm putting in, I need this bloke's face on the back of Quirrell in season 1. I need that continuity. I need him to play him in flashbacks if they're going to do flashbacks to him killing the Potters or his early days. Flashbacks in the Half-Blood Prince when he's taking his first jobs and stuff like that and all the work. Sure. So I'm looking at a versatile British actor, and I mentioned that lineage earlier. I had the Cumberbatch for his granddad. I've got his uncle as Jamie Bell. I've got, Mark Strong as Slytherin down the line. So I want someone who I don't want to actually appear in the show as much. I don't want him. I know we're going to get scenes, but the film's nailed Ralph Fiennes, right? He popped up at the end of 4. He popped up at the end of 5, and the little quick cameo in the snazzy suit at the start. Not seen in Half-Blood Prince. That's where his disciples run riot. And obviously 7 and part 1 and 2, huge impact. And they should do that for the show as well. Less is more. And in Voldemort's case, less is more of current day Voldemort. Do your flashbacks in Half-Blood Prince, bring your younger actors in, bring in the family, build him up to this irredeemable, terrifying, pure evil villain. He's also a hypocrite on top of being pure evil. And I was trying to look at a great pantheon of British actors who could play villains, and I actually thought I need someone that people might be a bit unnervous on set with. I need someone that's got not evil running through their veins, because that sounds very Jared Leto-esque, but I settled on an actor very quickly, and I haven't looked back. And I shouted earlier when his name was mentioned. I've put Robert Carlyle in as my Voldemort. I think he's got the face. I'm not saying he's got a weird nose, but he has the face. Okay, we saw him bold in The World Is Not Enough. Could he commit? I think he could. And people, I think, is he on the older side? Well, Voldemort died at the age of 71. I don't need him to be a young spring bean, but I think he'd be able to do the physical stuff easily still. And again, we're not going to really get too much of it. I'm not looking for anyone as theatrical as Ralph Fiennes was, and I loved Ralph Fiennes in it. I'd like this to go so far up the other end that he isn't playing around, he isn't pissing around. This guy just wants to kill someone, he's going to go kill this person. He's fuming this happened, he's fuming that's happened. So it's a very different Voldemort, and it entirely depends on their design for him when the time comes, but I think Robert Carlyle could easily do it. And I can also see him on the back of Quirrell's head in the first season.
Robert Carlyle's a great pick. For absolutely anything.
I was so good. He was called up. I was like, damn it, it was my great reveal that no one's mentioned him yet.
Well, thankfully, no one's mentioned my actor yet. So here we go. Here's the big one. Lord Voldemort. I think it's very, very difficult to top Ralph Fiennes. I think in general it is. And this actor's retired. So we're going to bring him out of retirement. We're pulling in the greatest actor of all time. We're pulling in Daniel Day-Lewis to come in as Lord Voldemort.
He's going to actually murder the child. He's going to mess
and that's my point. And that's my point. I'm sorry, but you need a threatening actor who may actually kill a few kids on set. Let's go with Daniel Day-Lewis. I genuinely believe that he knocks out every single performance at the park. You can't even argue with him at this point. You just allow him to go onto set and just do whatever the fuck he wanted to, and that would be perfect. He'd
never do an interview, which would make him more terrifying. No one sees him in the public eye until he's on this, and then disappears.
He could do scenes where he doesn't say a single word, and it says everything that's needed. Like he could also wax lyrical about how he enjoys killing Muggles and all of that as well. Daniel Day-Lewis is my guy. And there was a few people I could have picked. I mean, I almost went with Doug Jones just for the performance kind of art and going with the snake-like thing. I almost went with Stephen Merchant as well for a very similar kind of for the look, but I thought the accent maybe not. I just think Daniel Day-Lewis, he could throw any accent on that.
I'm going to kill you now. Hi guys, just here to kill some Muggles actually, if you don't mind. So, yeah, in picking Voldemort, obviously he's going to be on the back of Paul Bettany's head in season 1. He's not going to be in season 2. He's not going to be in season 3. He shows up in season 4. I'm casting someone who you can see the seeds of Voldemort in the Half-Blood Prince season. Those early days when he's a man, but he's already in the process. He's taking jobs. I want to see that confrontation where he wants to be Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher. He curses the position. I want to see that. I want to see a man who already looked like he could be related to Robert Carlyle, K.S. Scodelario, Charlie Cox. And then as he ripped his soul piece by piece, his humanity was ripped with it. I want the more snake-like design of, a bit of CGI. I want the more snake-like design, even more than what Ray Fiennes had. I want him to look snake-like. And I want an actor who can fully embody that, who's maybe not a headline actor, but can play this role so that when he does appear in season 4, you don't go, oh, that's such and such as Voldemort. You go, that's Voldemort. And I want someone who's got a voice that I would describe as snake-like. I loved what Ray Fiennes did with his voice, but I want someone who has a much harsher voice. I've gone for an actor who's done big villain roles in major motion pictures, facing off against the greatest movie star of all time. I've gone with Sean Harris. Sean Harris is terrifying. Sean Harris is one of the scariest actors in the world. He doesn't even have to say anything. He was apparently so scary in Harry Brown, Michael Caine was literally like, can you tell him to chill out? He was that intense. Because he talks like this, doesn't he? Harry, I'm coming for you. I think Sean Harris would ace the role. You get all those great scenes of him talking to Dumbledore. I want to be the Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher. But I just want that, kill the spare Peter Pettigrew. And all I can think of is Solomon Lane. He's so good in those Mission Impossible movies. And yeah, you give him the snake-like appearance. You give him the no-nose. I'd say maybe don't go with the red eyes, because it's a bit too much.
Yeah.
I don't think it'll ever work on screen.
No, you want the emotion from Sean Harris's acting, and I would love to see... And also, I love the idea, when you do the final scene, when he dies, that you then just go straight back to, that's just a guy. He's a guy that's ripped himself apart piece by piece, but it's just a guy. And yeah, like I say, Sean Harris's voice, I would describe as snake-like. It just gets into your ears. And I think he 100%
has a voice for it.
Great. Mm. I think he'd look great in that role as well. I think he's quite a slight guy. He's quite a skinny guy, but he plays those intense roles. Would he do it? I maybe. He might do it. He might. He seems to be into the big budget Hollywood movies. He did 2 Mission Impossible, so maybe.
I could. Who's your Dumbledore pick again? Because I think
Hugh
I
Laurie.
can imagine. I can imagine him having a battle with Hugh Laurie. I can imagine him having a battle with all of our Dumbledore picks, actually. So that's one thing to kind of consider as well.
And he's the one person he's afraid of is Dumbledore. The only person who's ever afraid of Dumbledore. And he was always onto him. Always onto him. And I like all three picks. Daniel Lewis has called me off guard, I'm not going to lie. Maybe this Sun Direction episode is guaranteed to come on. Is it where he's coming back because his son's now directing? It's like, oh, that's all right. That's the price we pay. His son directs an episode of Harry Potter. Great. When we sat down, I think was it Joker when you're like, my pick's Sean Harris. You just start doing the voice. I'm like,
yeah,
fuck. Like, you're right though. He's British as well. I don't think he's that familiar. I mean, Ray Fiennes was familiar, right? But was Ray Fiennes familiar in 2005 to kids? I don't think
probably
he was.
Not kids, no.
I think as everyone grew up, it's like, fucking hell, it's Amon Goeth. Fucking hell, it's Harry from In Bruges. And, you know, you've got these great roles there. And then you look back, it's like, wow, Ray Fiennes is a legend. Like, he is. And I think this could be one of those. I like all three. Robert Carlyle's like, it's a good pick. Then it's like Sean Harris, like, that's the twisted. He's an even more twisted Robert Carlyle than Robert Carlyle.
That's what I like the idea of. I want to see him when he goes to kill his grandfather as well. Just being like, I've always hated you. I just think I could just see him doing, because even when he shouts, it's like he's trying to whisper shout. And I think, Sean Harris was one of the first ones I nailed down, and I was like, that voice is, I think, would become the default of, but a bit like people say Mark Hamill is the default Joker. I think he could become the default, because Ray Fiennes' one is a bit theatrical. It works for a movie, but if you're doing a deep dive, taking, and when you see the flashbacks, that is really the Half-Blood Prince is the most interesting book, I think, because you start peeling back the layers of the Voldemort history and who he was, and I think that's really, that season's going to be the most interesting one, I think.
No, I'm with you. And that's kind of crux of a lot of this, is that the show, is it the most authentic adaptation ever? That's what they tell us. It will remain to be seen, but this is kind of where we've done this across 3 episodes, across 6 hours of videos. So I do hope people have enjoyed this one today. I hope people have enjoyed the series. I appreciate both of you being on this for all 3 as well. It's been quite lengthy. It's been a lot of work. It's been a lot of fun as well. We've never really done fan casting things properly. We've had a half-baked series idea, but yeah, it's been fun to do this. It's been very different. So I do want to hear people at home comment who you want to see in some of these roles. Do you have favourites? Do you not? If you've not seen the first 2 episodes, maybe have a look. It's 3 of these. We're not going to be doing another one next week. It was a 3-part special. We're beginning December. It's that time of year. So there will be more Harry Potter things. I guess we can say when there are things to talk about. Maybe there'll be the odd sporadic video like when we did a Mount Rushmore. So any other details, any other announcements, we'll post them on our social medias, linktree.com, puts you through to Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, and Blue Sky. On top of that, we've got a lot of things happening. I mentioned Mount Rushmore. We're heading into the Christmas season. We've got new reviews. I need to do a Conclave review, because obviously that was yesterday. It came out by the time this video goes up, and Ray Fiennes is in it. A lot's happening. It's been a busy time. Paul, what are you up to? You've done 3 episodes plus a Mount Rushmore on this. We're very, very grateful. And it all started off the back of a conversation after a recording. You just started doing voices and what you're in.
That's it. That's just. It was all leading up to my spot-on Sean Harris impression. I made you do 6 hours of recording so I could do the voice. Please don't kill me, Sean Harris. I think I'm actually like 3rd cousins with him as well. This is what I've heard. I've heard. That could be wrong. Please don't kill me, Sean Harris, because you're a scary guy. But no, I'm still writing for Filmhounds, doing reviews, features. Look up my stuff. If you go onto my Twitter, you can find my link tree, and you'll find all the sort of my TikTok, because I'm one of those guys now. My Blue Sky, my Letterboxd. My Letterboxd is not full of film reviews. It's full of dumb observations. There's no hard-hitting journalism.
Still good to have, though. Follow you on it. See what Paul's been watching. And I said a massive thank you for jumping on and for a lot of other videos across the year. We really do appreciate it. God, I don't know what else. There's a lot of things happening, isn't there? We're heading up to Christmas. There's going to be more things. So once again, everybody at home, thank you so much for watching. Be sure to join us on the next one. And if you're new to this, watch the other videos. We'll have links in the description to the Harry Potter stuff. So that's going to do it for today. Thank you all, and we'll see you on the next one. Take care.